Good morning. I'd like to call the June 5th morning session of the Johnston County Commissioners to order. Welcome those who are here today to participate in the meeting, whether you're here in person or watching us on our live stream on YouTube. I will say it's budget season and our number of friends has grown who attended our meeting. So welcome. It's good to see all the faces here today. A couple of things. You'll notice that Commissioner April Stevens' seat is not filled today. However, she is the first non-continental U.S. participant in our meeting, so she is on the live stream. She will be in, and if y'all will all remind me to the delay when she says yes or no or as a comment, I would appreciate it. Also, I mentioned the folks who are watching on live stream, and I'm going to take a minute of personal privilege here. I have a grandson, Max, and that's Max with an exclamation point. He knows, you know what that means, Max, but he's watching today, so I'm glad that I have my now 9-year-old grandson who's watching today. The other thing that you'll notice in the corner is we have a screen now, so if you're up speaking and you have a presentation, you don't have to look sideways anymore, so you'll be able to look forward. So we're excited, and we thank our PIO and the other staff, IT staff, for helping that happen. And we're working on a laser pointer too, so that's coming next. And the final thing I will say is at each meeting we talk about our 6 board priorities that we established at our retreat in March, and just a reminder of those and things you will hear throughout. And this is budget season, so financial stewardship is a big part of what this meeting is about. It's a big part of what we do every day and what staff does every day. But the 6 priorities are, as I said, financial stewardship, infrastructure, land use, public safety, and county employees. So with that, we will move on, and as is customary, we will open with the prayer. I've asked Vice Chairman Harris to lead us in the prayer, and we have American Legion Post 132 of Smithfield to lead us in the pledge. So if you would, please rise.
Let us pray together. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we come to you in prayer this morning to thank you for this glorious day, to thank you for the opportunity to be present here, to serve the people of this county. Father, we thank you for this meeting where the citizens can come together and conduct their business. Lord, we just thank you for your blessings on each one of us. Lord, I ask your blessings on all that we do and say. Give us strength and wisdom and courage and understanding and compassion. Father, we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
And salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. To that faith.
All right, please be seated. The first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda, or are there any changes?
Mr. Chairman, I move the agenda be approved as presented.
Second. All right, any other discussion? All those in favor of approval of the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda is approved. Next up, we have the consent agenda items, and there are 15 items on this list, so I'll touch on each one of them briefly. We have approval of the minutes from our May 1st meeting, both the 10 o'clock and 6 o'clock meetings. We have some additions to the DOT system. We have approval of an audit contract for the year ending June 30th, 2023. We have a Celebrate the Cleveland Committee, a request for a temporary road closure for their 4th of July celebration. We have a call for a public hearing for fire district boundary revision. We have also approval of the minutes, transcription services, contract extension, Veteran Services Advisory Board, replacement of board members, approval of municipal funding agreement between Town of Benson and Johnston County, approval of municipal funding agreement between Town of Princeton and Johnston County. We also have the Johnston County Detention Center 179D allocation, and we also have a request from the Sheriff's Office to surplus vehicles and schedule public auction. And then we have the same request from Emergency Services, request to surplus vehicles. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 budget revisions, and then we have appointments to several boards, and finally we have the tax releases and refunds. Any item there need to be pulled for further discussion, or I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, make a motion we approve the consent agenda as stated.
I second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. All right, next up we have public comments. And I'll read our short address here. I think if you're here to speak in the public hearing on the budget, you'll have a time during that to speak, but this is on any item that is not otherwise on the agenda. You can come forward and address the board. Please state your name and your town or township that you're from. And also, in order to balance the need and desire for citizen input with the necessity of disposing of the board's regular business items, speakers be allowed 3 minutes to address the board. To avoid repetitiveness, groups of people supporting or opposing the same positions are encouraged to select a spokesperson to speak. Speakers shall at all times maintain proper decorum and make their comments in a civil manner. And again, the reminder for both the board and the public that this is a listening opportunity to hear the thoughts and concerns of the public, and is not intended for this to be a discussion or response from the board with impromptu questions. So with all that said, anyone wishing to come on, speak on something not on the agenda, please come forward. I could save myself a lot of time reading that if I'd asked that question up front. All right, so I think, do we have email comments? Oh, hang on. You gave me a lot of papers today.
We've got some comments here.
All right, come on, and if you would, name and your town, please. Oh. Oh, I see. You threw me off there. I'm still looking for paperwork here, saying.
Mr. Renfro, did you have something, sir?
I did, yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you for the time. I'll be very brief. The 911 centers across the state hold a conference each year, North Carolina APCO NENA conference, and they distribute awards based on colleagues that are in the industry across the state that do an outstanding job each year. And there are many of those, but certain ones stand out far beyond. One of our Johnston County's employees that has served this county in public safety for nearly 33 years received an award this year. It was a state award. He was nominated over 3 times throughout the state. And the defining factor in that was the nominations are put forth and distributed to the board for our respective boards for our committees. But the winners are chosen by chapter out of state. So it's what we consider to be a very fair and equitable distribution of the award based on the merit of the submission and the information within. Mr. Jimmy Turberville, he has served with the North Carolina Highway Patrol. He has served with North Carolina DMV, and his remaining of his career in public safety has been with Johnston County as the support services manager for the 911 center. He's served not only Johnston County, a lot of the work that he does helps protect the citizens in this county each and every day. He maintains all of our technology that helps with what we do as a public safety agency. It filters all the way down to the fire service, the EMS, law enforcement. You can name it, right down to the individual citizen in our county. They benefit greatly from it. And I just wanted to bring that to y'all's attention. We are very blessed to have Jimmy as a fellow employee here with the county. It is bittersweet. Jimmy has announced his retirement, and he will be retiring soon, and the county will be at a great loss in regards to that. But we have people standing ready to fill those shoes as best we can. He is a mentor to me. He is a mentor to many, many others. And I just felt like it warranted y'all's knowledge that he was given the North Carolina APCO 2023 Public Safety Information Technologist of the Year for 2023.
Wow. Very impressive.
Outstanding.
We
All
could,
right.
Could we get a brief, one quick snapshot?
Sure, sure.
If that's not too much.
Only if Mr. Turberville will smile.
I do. Smile all the time. Most of the time it's inside the
Congratulations, sir.
Yeah,
Well deserved.
congratulations.
Very good.
We're gonna get,
Right up here.
if you don't mind getting that, it's very thank you. Hold it right there.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. Okay, I got 3.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Well deserved.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
All right, anyone else for public comment? All right, I would like to acknowledge we did receive an email. Our clerk received one, this, and it's regarding Juneteenth. It's a request to have us follow the, some other counties, particularly mentioned Wayne County, for us to consider the observance of, adding the observance of Juneteenth to our holiday schedule. So, and that is all the emails that we received this month, so. Next up, we have a proclamation for Elder Abuse Awareness Day, and I'm going to ask for our Director of DSS, Scott Sabatino, to come forward and speak to us on that.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Chairman, Commissioners. Yes, we're coming before you to ask you to proclaim June 15th as Elder Abuse Awareness Day. As you know, elder abuse, we had child abuse last month, and elder abuse goes from the middle of May through the middle of June. They do it a little bit differently. They actually have World Day on that particular day. It's World Elder Abuse Day. So we're asking that Johnston County proclaim that as Elder Abuse Day in Johnston County. We would appreciate it.
All right. Vice Chairman Harris, I believe, has the proclamation to read.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. It's a proclamation for Elder Abuse Awareness Day, June 15th, 2023. Whereas Johnston County includes over 35,000 citizens aged 60 and older that deserve to live safely and with dignity and as independently as possible with the supports they need. And whereas elder abuse is the most often defined as any act that harms a senior or jeopardizes his or her health, safety, or welfare. And whereas Johnston County's older population is a vital, important part of the community that contributes to the social and cultural education of future generations. And whereas identifying, reporting, and eliminating abuse, neglect, and exploitation to older persons is each community's responsibility. And whereas all residents should watch for signs of physical abuse, withdrawal, depression, anxiety, fear, and living without necessities such as food, heat, air, medicine, and make it known to the proper institutions. Now, therefore, we, the Johnston County Board of Commissioners, does hereby proclaim June 15th, 2023 as Elder Abuse Awareness Day in Johnston County and encourage everyone to commit to protecting the safety and future of our older citizens, adopted this 5th day of June 2023. Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve that proclamation.
A second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the proclamation. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, sir.
All right, next item is we have a presentation for the Economic Development Incentive Grant on Project Life Dust. I will now open this as a public hearing and call on Chris Johnston to come forward to explain the purpose of the public hearing and introduce any company representatives that are, present.
Excuse me. Thank you. Good morning, county leadership. As you know, the Johnston County Economic Development Office has not been able to respond to and submit to numerous investment and job creation projects due to the lack of building inventory. And this represents billions of dollars of investment and thousands of high-paying jobs. The question for many communities is how do you properly address this issue and still be prudent to the taxpayer citizens we represent and serve. Johnston County is heavily competing against counties that have purchased their own land and built their own buildings. And this has been successful in many cases, but it also puts at risk the taxpayers. Here in Johnston County, under your guidance and leadership, we have taken a more prudent and conservative approach where government is not competing against the private sector. We've been fortunate to work with willing property owners to offer up their land for industrial development at no cost to the taxpayers, and this public-private partnership has been successful with the recent project announcements at the Forks Business Park and Eastfield Business Park. Yet the question before you and before the community today is how do we remain competitive in this economic development field, grow jobs here at home, and expand the tax base. Speed to market has never been greater, and this is something that you are aware of and have addressed. With the building lease program that has been funded in the budget, developers work in partner with the county to construct a Class A building to be marketed to potential clients considering Johnston County. And this model has been very successful over in Lee County, and it's our hopes that it can be duplicated here in Johnston County. For citizens in attendance as well as listening online, this 2-year month-to-month lease program does not begin until the building has received its temporary certificate of occupancy. The $3 a foot up to 100,000 square feet lease rate is very well below the market rate for Class A space. If the building is sold or leased prior to the completion of the building, the county is not required to make any lease payments for the building. And if during the time of the 2-year lease is the building is sold to the client, the county's commitment is immediately over. It is BioRealty's desire to collaborate with the county to invest and build a state-of-the-art life science campus with the potentially 3 Class A biotechnology facilities that will be located on Ranch Road in the town of Clayton. BioRealty is a leading life science site selection group and development with projects in multiple markets throughout the U.S., and they have a very strong background that focuses on life science, ag tech, and the biopharma industries. In addition to the millions of infrastructure improvements and the multi-million-dollar investment in Phase 1, the project has the ability to create a multitude of high-paying jobs that will complement the already strong presence of our pharmaceutical sector. Salaries will far exceed the current county average. As with all economic development incentive grants, this has been vetted and approved by the Johnston County Economic Development Board, a board that consists of 14 business, civic, and community leaders that has a representation from every municipality in Johnston County. As customary, this project and investment projections have also been evaluated by Dr. Mike Walden, retired professor and economist from North Carolina State, and his report shows that the monetary investment and the jobs, as well as the ancillary jobs, is projected to be within the thousands annually for the county. As County Attorney Jennifer Slusher will cover, the project checks all the 4 legal statutory boxes regarding to offering an economic development incentive. Does that meet the job creation requirement? Does it meet the investment threshold? Does it meet the competition of other locations? And does the project meet the jobs diversification requirement? And the answer to all these questions is an undeniable yes. The Johnston County Economic Development Advisory Board respectfully asks that the county commissioners vote favorably on the county's economic development incentive grant and lease program presented before you this morning. And at this time, I'd like to call on Ms. Jennifer Slusher to present to you the legal language, and after which I'll step back up and introduce Mr. Stan Wenzel with the BioRealty and invite him to make a few comments. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Ms. Slusher?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I offer for your consideration a resolution attaching a proposed economic development incentive grant for the project proposed by Biome Clayton 1 or by Realty, as described by Mr. Johnston. Prior to getting into the details of the documents, I just want to refresh your recollection as to what you are required to consider when reviewing these incentive grant documents. First of all, you've got to consider job creation. Second, capital investment. Third, competition. And fourth, diversification of the economy. So keeping those factors in mind, I'd like to review the proposed framework of the proposed agreements with BioRealty. I also want to add that this project was a joint project with the town of Clayton, and the town of Clayton has approved incentives for this project. As to the incentive grant agreement, as Mr. Johnston noted, this proposed project consists of 3 project components on a project site with a proposed combined capital investment in real estate of at least $27 million. And the purpose of this is to develop and to construct approximately 100,000 square feet of Class A speculative space for uses by companies. And so each building will be not less than 100,000 square feet, and there are 3 buildings. The purpose of this speculative space is to support companies that are in the areas of biopharmaceutical research, development, or manufacturing, which is strategically important to Johnston County and will serve as a catalyst for future development in this area of Johnston County. The performance commitments with respect to jobs is solid and will exceed the Johnston County median wage, and the capital investment for the purposes of the grant will be made in 3 phases. So the first phase, or the first building, will be fully complete by December 31, 2028. The second phase, or the second building, will be fully complete by June 30, 2031. And the final phase, or final building, will be completed by December 31, 2033. The incentive proposal before you is in 2 parts. First, a cash grant, and then second, the county's speculative lease program, and I want to go through those real quickly with you. First of all, the cash grant is made in 5 annual payments for each project component, and it's quantified and measured by 50% of the ad valorem taxes paid on eligible investments. And in this case, the eligible investments are real estate improvements that are made during the investment period. The grant payments are conditioned on Realty paying in full all of its ad valorem taxes for that year for all of its properties situated within Johnston County, and they must be current on all payments that are owed to the county. They've got to be current in the filing of all of their property tax listings, have no appeal pending before the Board of Equalization and Review or the Property Tax Commission, and cannot be in violation of any other commitment to the county, and including county ordinances and regulations. So the second part of the incentive package is the county speculative building lease program. Upon preliminary shell completion of the building in each project component, the county will enter into a lease with Realty for $3 per square foot, not to exceed 100,000 square feet, and for a term not to exceed 2 years. If the building is sold, then the county is repaid any money spent, and if the building is leased, the lease payments from the county will terminate. Importantly, Realty commits that these projects will be used for bio-use at these sites for a term that's specifically outlined in the grant. Like building completion, so full build-out, preliminary shell completion also has milestones that must be met, and the first project component is required to be completed by June 30, 2026. The second project component is required to be completed by June 30, 2029, and the third project component is required to be completed by June 30, 2031, and that's the preliminary shell completion. There are recapture provisions within the proposed agreement if Realty does not carry out or maintain the terms of the agreement. And now that we've talked through the proposals of the incentives, I want to go back through those factors that you're required to consider, and that will give you the information that you need to make a determination as to how you would like to proceed. The first thing, job creation. According to the economic impact analysis by Dr. Mike Walden, the private sector direct and indirect job creation is significant, and the direct job creation performance commitment requires salaries at or above the Johnston County median wage. The capital investment here does increase the tax base. There are extensive infrastructure improvements that are being made by the developer, and the direct capital investment in just the real estate is $27 million for the entire project. Finally, competition is required, and Johnston County was competing against sites throughout the United States for this project, and the incentives that are offered by Johnston County and the town of Clayton were the deciding factor for the project to be located here. This project does meet all of the county's incentive policies for this type of project. The Economic Development Incentive Grant Agreement meets the policies for the programs as more particularly described earlier. And final approval must be made at a public meeting, which was properly noticed. This was properly noticed. And a written agreement, which is attached to the resolution, would govern the implementation. Finally, diversification of the economy alongside job creation and increasing the tax base as an indicator of net public benefit arises from this incentive. Diversification of the economy refers to significant impacts on sectors of the economy or making a location attractive for additional development. This is all addressed in the Walden report, and as Mr. Johnson told you, having spec-ready space available to attract new businesses and finding an end user that will bring jobs to the county meets this purpose. This project meets all of the above referenced criteria should you decide to approve it, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? I did have a couple, so just to make sure, it's $3 a square foot up to a maximum of 100,000?
Square feet, yeah, so total.
Oh, 100 square, okay.
The total risk is $600,000 per building. The likelihood that we get there, we think, is slim.
And you described the preliminary completion component as the shell.
The shell,
The shell
yes.
unit, okay.
And that gives the developer the additional time that would be necessary to custom spec it. We've got the spec shell, and then the developer will have the ability to sort of build to suit for the person that comes in to utilize the space.
Okay. And then the dates for that preliminary component was basically 2 years before, is that what was the 20, you had
Yes.
28, so what
Yeah,
was
so
the
it's-
28, 31, and 33 dates? What was that?
So 26 is preliminary shell, with the building having to be completed by 28.
Okay.
And then the second building, preliminary shell, is 29, with final completion by 31. And then the last building is 31, with final completion 33.
Okay. So this is a little bit different than previous because of the time frames.
Because of the timeframes, the amount of infrastructure that's going to be required by the developer, and because of the scope of the project, with it being a three-phase project. So just a little different than what we've done before.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Lester. I guess if there's anyone else in the audience that wishes to comment, please come forward, state your name and your general location, town or township, for the record. Anyone? Okay. I didn't know if, I saw we have economic
I was going to
development.
introduce
Okay.
thing
I didn't know if you had
and let
something
him
to
make
say,
any
too.
comments
Okay.
that, or answer any questions that you may have. Adam has on the drawing. First, I want to also recommend and recognize Patrick Pierce with the town of Clayton and his due diligence and really bringing this together. Again, Realty is going to be extending millions of dollars of infrastructure to this site that obviously the town will benefit from, as well as the citizens along Ranch Road. So we see this as a biopharmaceutical gateway off the new section of I-42. So without further ado, I'll introduce Stan Wenzel.
Mr. Wenzel.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Chairman, members of the board, I am Stan Wenzel, one of the principals of Realty. I just wanted to say, first of all, we just greatly appreciate the opportunity to work with you guys, work with the County of Johnston, and as well as the town of Clayton. We're not only excited about the project, but we're really excited about attracting what we think is largely, very likely going to be biomanufacturing users to this park. And you guys have done a terrific job with Novo and Grifols and other major players in the space. We're hopeful to bring others. We've done many projects for life science and biomanufacturing across the U.S., and frankly, a lot of communities like this type of project, and we could have probably done this a lot of places. But for us, the real driving factor behind this has been the lease program that Johnston County has in place, as well as the EDIG. We do agree to the terms that we've outlined in that lease program, as well as the EDIG, and we just thank you in advance for granting us that incentive package.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Wenzel? All right. Anyone else wishing to come forward? Mr. Pierce, I was going to keep looking at you until you got up.
I know. Thank you, sir. My name is Patrick Pierce, Economic Development Director with the Town of Clayton, and thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Chairman, and the Johnston County Commissioners here. We think this is a fantastic project. We've been working with the Realty team here for coming up on 2 years now to put this together. I think it's a project that offers really a benefit both to larger Johnston County. As we see those employers, they pull employees from really all over the county and all over the region, so definitely a larger benefit from the town, and I think really builds upon the cluster of biopharma that we have in this county, and really I think strengthens it for additional investment, and just think it's a fantastic project, and appreciate your consideration of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right.
Any
Thank
questions
you.
for Mr. Pierce? All right.
All right.
Thank
so
you.
much.
All right. Any final questions or comments by the board?
I have a question for Chris,
All right.
if I may. I know this is intended to be a biopharmaceutical type facility. What would happen if, because of the presence of a building, if someone came in who's not, is it strictly limited to that type of?
It's strictly limited to, for that type of facility.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Good.
So, and it has to meet the job requirements as well as the salaries and things like that.
That in and of itself might limit it to that.
Exactly.
And I will add the accessibility to this site with the, I guess, the ongoing construction of the 42 or 36, soon to be 36 connector in the Ranch Road and accessibility to 70 bypass / I-42. That'll be tremendous help for an asset for that site. So, all right, I will now close the public hearing and turn it over to the board for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the resolution approving the Economic Development Incentive Grant Agreement as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, next up, we have public hearing for fiscal year 2023-24 Johnston County proposed budget. I will now open the public hearing and call on County Manager Rick Hester for his comments and requests and from his budget message. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, board members. Just wanted to mention that the budget has been presented several days ago. It's been written about, and I would just respectfully request, as I do on an annual basis, that the budget message be entered into the minutes. And you have several speakers here today. Some I think you have on a list, and there may be some additional ones as well. And I do think there may be some that attend your June 12th, 6 p.m. session as well. So, thank you.
Thank you.
all right, thank you. All right, we do have a list of, well, I don't know, looks like 8 or 10 off the top of my head. And first up, we have Chief Chris Ellington here to present to us on the fire matrix and funding for that. So, Chief Ellington.
Chairman, Commissioners, thank you again for allowing me to come to you and speak one more time about the funding matrix. I feel like been on the agenda several times and we've hashed it out a lot, but we can finally see some light at the end of the tunnel, I believe. Where we're at today is, last budget year we funded phase 1 of the funding matrix with great success, and those departments are doing great things and moving along. This year, we're coming to request what we're calling step number 3, and that's implementation of phase 2. That would implement the funding matrix in its entirety. That would, things it would do for the fire service of Johnston County, it would establish a minimum level of funding for departments so that they'll be able to provide the services that are needed to the citizens as well as their firefighters. Things it'll do are, provide funding for testing such as ladders, pumps, SCBAs, things such as that, and many more items. And also there's a line item in the matrix that talks about staffing, recruitment and retention of volunteers, which is a national problem, as well as staffing, whether that be part-time or full-time staffing. It provides an incentive for the department to lower its insurance ratings, which will save the citizens tax money, will save the taxpayers money. It also is an incentive for departments that are not currently providing medical responder service to do so. That funding will assist in that way. The part 1 of our request today is to fund the fire matrix, like I said, in its entirety, in the amount of $4.2 million. And then step 2 would be for the commissioners to to ask staff to move towards a common tax rate, a special service fire tax, to implement a countywide tax across the county to provide these services, fund the matrix as well as fund the departments. I told Commissioner Browser I would be short and sweet because I've been here so many times, so how did I do?
You did great.
Okay.
Just remember next time.
Yeah. Any other questions for Chief Allington? I'm going to make him stand up. So looking at the two things you talked about, 4.2 million to fully implement the fire matrix, and then a countywide fire tax. This may be a question for our attorney as well. But what is going to be the benefit of the people of Johnston County if this is implemented?
So, like I said, the things that it does for it establishes a minimum level of service to the citizens from the fire departments. It actually helps with the testing model that we were talking about, SCBA testing, ensuring our firefighters are safe and can provide a safe service to them as well as the citizens. It props up our recruitment and retention program of our departments and for our volunteers. That's some of the ways that it helps. It equals the playing field, if you will, for departments that are not funded as strong as some of the others. Some of our matrix work, there would have to be, with the matrix money that will be received, some of the departments would have to have a tax rate of over 30 cents to get this kind of money to provide services, and that's just not feasible. So this matrix actually funds them in a manner that we don't have to tax citizens that much.
All right. So whether I'm in Antioch or Meadow or Cleveland, there will be some minimum standard and
Absolutely.
similar service all out the county.
Right. And that minimum standard would be so that the lowest department can meet that as well as the largest department. We're not putting anyone out of business. We're getting everybody up to a certain standard. So.
All right. Mr. Chairman, I would like to take a moment, since they're here, to thank Chris and his committee, which is Chief Johnny Dixon over there, Chief Alan Johnston back there, Chief Barry Stanley back there. I don't see 2 years, 3 years, this has been, they've given their time and energy, so I want to thank you for what you do.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to thank the county staff as well, because they've been very, very helpful in this whole process. We would not be where we are today had they not been as willing to help as they were. So.
I certainly think the people of Johnston County are in a good hands when I visit the fire stations, and you don't really know what goes on day in and day out, but it's not a good old boys meeting. It's a lot of work, a lot of planning, a lot of dedication, and I, for one, am very grateful for that to all of our fire departments.
Thank you, sir.
Chief, how was this approach taken or received by all of the chiefs? I know y'all have well worked together. How was it received by the broad
We have
range?
we worked with the chiefs throughout the county on several occasions, trying to get the general consensus of how everyone thought about this project and how it was moving forward. We actually sent out a survey in the early stages and gathered their needs, and then at the end we sent out a letter and asked for support. And I brought those letters with me today. We received 22 letters of support, and one letter just stated that they didn't support it or not support it, they just needed more information.
Okay.
So it was abundantly clear that we needed to move to a new funding model for the county, and we needed that change, and it was a welcome change.
That was a broad consensus then, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to add that I've spoken about it many times, that the decline of volunteerism is a nationwide problem, and our fire departments do an extraordinary job with doing a lot for just a little, and I'm so thankful that they're willing to do that. But I do think that the time has come that we've got to take a different approach, and I appreciate the chiefs and the leadership that have put all this time and effort, and it has been a daunting task. I know you've had many meetings about how to move forward appropriately and give the taxpayers the most return for their dollars and to provide the most efficient level of service that you can, and I appreciate that very much. And I think we're on the right track. I think it's going to be an evolutionary process. It'll take a while to get there, but I think we're definitely making the right steps. So thank you for your service
Absolutely.
and leadership
Thank
on
you.
that. Appreciate that.
All right. I think that's it. Thank you, Chief.
All right, thank you.
Chiefs.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Johnny. Adam.
All right, next up, we have Robert Boyette with the request on behalf of the Veteran Services. Mr. Boyette, how are you?
Good morning, Chairman. How you doing?
Good morning.
Good.
Pass this around right quick. I'll be very brief, sir. Basically, the Johnston County Veterans Office is requesting an additional line item budget of $50,000 to provide transportation for veterans to VA medical facilities in Durham, Raleigh, Goldsboro, and Clayton. The funding would be used to provide transportation for veterans who have no other means of transportation to attend critical appointments at VA healthcare facilities. Veterans who are attending routine exams and appointments would be encouraged to seek VA health care through primary care physicians at local VA clinics, such as the ones in Clayton and Goldsboro, instead of seeking primary care in Durham. We would also encourage veterans to seek approval from their primary care physicians to obtain approval for community-based care due to hardships. Community-based care allows for care in the local community for treatments such as dialysis, chemotherapy, and physical rehabilitation. This would allow veterans to be treated locally by private providers in the community at VA expense and alleviate the need to travel to Durham for care. These initiatives would mitigate the cost of travel for care and extend the funding for use by more veterans. The transportation would be coordinated through and paid to JCATS. This is an augmentation to and not a replacement of the current transportation provided to veterans through the local Disabled American Veterans vans operated here in Smithfield. So basically just asking for a $50,000 addition to the budget to provide transportation for veterans in Johnston County for health care through the VA.
All right. Any questions of Mr. Boyette?
I got a few.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Colonel, for recognizing the need. My question is centered around the DAV and their vans. They go to Durham and Fayetteville, right?
They go to Durham, sir.
Durham.
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, that's right, because they don't allow each other for some strange reason. Because of government bureaucracy, they won't allow one to go to Durham and then not go to Fayetteville, which makes little sense. But we'll let somebody smarter than me figure that out. But they're having trouble getting drivers, right?
That's essentially the issue, yes, sir.
And that's, you know, as a member of that organization, I know that we struggle and we're old. But anyway, I appreciate you doing this, trying to help the transportations of our veterans. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I've heard family members talk about the difficulty in getting timely appointments in Durham at the VA. What about the local option with community-based care? Is that going as smooth or better than the VA in Durham?
It is somewhat smooth. It's it does have to be approved by the VA primary care physician. So basically, what happens if you need dental care at the VA, and in Durham, and they can't support it. Let's say they can't get you in there for 6 months, but you need to be seen before that. The primary care physician can grant you to go out into the local community, such as somewhere here in Smithfield or somewhere Clayton, and not have to go to Durham for that. But it does have to be approved by the VA physician so that they can provide a reimbursement for that cost.
So it's an option, but it's a necessary
It's an option with an approval. Yes,
Right.
sir.
Okay.
So, it's an option with a caveat. But you mentioned the drivers. That is basically the issue. Just the DAV is asking for volunteer drivers to travel all over Johnston County every day to pick up veterans and take them to Durham, and there's no funding for that. So it's kind of hard to find those people who are willing to do that. So that's really the real issue with the DAV van.
I noticed you mentioned Durham, Raleigh, Goldsboro, and Clayton, but not Fayetteville.
Right, and that's something we probably could add. I mean, it's just a matter of funding for JCATS to travel to Fayetteville, but I don't see any reason why we couldn't do that. That's just the normal routine of where most veterans in Johnston County go, but there are some that go to Fayetteville, and that could be added. Certainly no reason why not to.
Okay, thank you.
Board, we discussed this at our Veterans Advisory Council and felt like utilizing the existing program with JCATS might be the most viable option to fill this need.
You talking about the quick ride program or the traditional JCATS?
Talking about adding funding to piggyback on the quick ride.
Okay, yeah, okay.
And hopefully, well, certainly there will be a new VA facility. It's currently under construction. It is in Wake County, but it's right outside of Johnston County borders on Highway 50 on Rand Road. And the intent is to have that built by late 2024. And that would alleviate a lot of transportation needs going up to Durham as well.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Of the $50,000, is that going to be allocated to the Veteran Services, or would that be a direct allocation to JCATS?
It would be, in talking with JCATS, what we would do is we allocate it to the Veteran Service Office.
Okay.
And then we would manage the transportation, and JCATS would invoice it through us.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you do.
Yes, sir.
All right, next up, we have Mike Winslow with the NC Forest Service with the request. Good morning, Mr. Winslow.
Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Good.
If I can figure this out. I am here to request. This one here.
Just so you know, you're the first one to do this in a live meeting, so there you go.
I'm here representing the North Carolina Forest Service. I'm the Johnston County Ranger here. I do have a staff of 4, including myself. My primary responsibility is overseeing the fire control and prevention and forest management program here in Johnston County. And I'm here to make a request, a small increase to our budget needs. Currently, right now, we're at $382,000 total budget, with the county paying $152,800 of that $382,000. Okay, so that was how. Our expected expenses this week that we're going to be having this year, we are anticipating a 2.5% to 3.5% increase, legislative increase for this year. We also have a improvements to our heavy equipment maintenance program and personal protective equipment needs. The largest part of the increase that we're seeking from the county is because the cost of trucks has increased from $33,000 to around $50,000. And again, the total impact on our current budget this year would be $27,000. We are requesting an increase of $10,800 from the county, for a total of $409,000. And that is all I have, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Winslow?
Yes, sir, I do. Mr. Chair, back up to your other slide.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Winslow, if you don't mind, please. So of the 163,604 that you're showing the county, does that include the 10,804?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
that's the number you need. Okay.
Yes.
And Mr. Hester, that's included in your budget proposal as it?
163,604.
That's it. Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would add, Mr. Winslow, before you leave, I just want to thank y'all for your service. North Carolina Forest Service is probably one of the best kept secrets, and you provide a service that nobody else provides, especially in fire control, forest management, those type of things. The fire control aspect of it is just, y'all do a phenomenal job. And with all the fire departments and all the things, that you fill a need that nobody else can fill. There's no better sight than to see that tractor and plow coming through the woods when nobody else can get to it, and hoses won't reach, and all those other problems that you have. So thank you for your service. We appreciate you.
Yes, sir. And hopefully within a few weeks, it will be a brand new John Deere tractor plow this year.
Very good.
How long have you been doing this, Mike?
In September, it'll be 25 years, sir.
Okay, good. I knew you'd been around a long time. Good work.
So I did have one, since it's not your first time being here presenting, and I'm just curious, how is it looking that way instead of that way when you're making a presentation.
A lot easier.
There we go, there we go. We don't need to ask any
Not
more
on
questions.
everybody. I think he's talking directly to me.
All right, well, thank you for that feedback.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, next up, we have My Kids Club with request. And Sarah, I'm gonna say formerly Daniels. How about that? How do I pronounce your last name?
Bowles. Yes, sir. So Lynn
Oh.
Bowles, Lynn Daniels Bowles. For
Oh, well,
us.
they have a different name down here now. Okay.
Oh, Sarah Shrasky, yes, is our executive director.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh,
and
okay.
Also here, thank you. Yes, so Mr. Chair and Commissioners, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and speak today. We are serving more students, club members this year than we were able to serve last year, and we have already filled up our summer camp, so we're excited about that. We do have a waiting list for our summer camp that'll begin in June. And construction has begun on our building, and we are on track for completion of January 2024. So we appreciate everyone attending the groundbreaking and look forward to inviting you to our grand opening next year. Our board of directors are composed of local educators, business leaders, and community members. We are proud of our statistics, serving our community in Smithfield and Selma clubs currently. And it is our mission to encourage and empower youth to grow in character and understanding through studies and opportunities for academic success, civil engagement, and habits that underscore healthy living to achieve their potential as responsible and caring citizens. We are pleased to report that the merger is moving along well with Boys and Girls Club of Wake County. Some of our big issues, like our name, which would be Boys and Girls Club of Johnston County, ownership of the building staying in the county, and separate financial reporting have been pretty much settled with Wake County. With our plates full with the merger and building our new clubhouse in 2023, expansion to other areas of Johnston County, Princeton and Vincent particularly, will likely not happen this year. We're hoping to maybe start with summer programs, and we do have our plates full this summer already. These communities will need to demonstrate their commitment to funding those new clubs before we can commit to programs in those communities. So that will be a 2024 initiative. And Wake County Boys and Girls Club is supportive of that. Since our beginnings of My Kids Club in 2006, the commissioners have been very supportive of our building and our operations, and we certainly appreciate our long and historic relationship. And you've helped thousands of children here in this community. So this year we are humbly requesting $200,000 funding to help us to continue to go through Johnston County where the need is great. So thank you so much for your consideration.
Any questions? All right. Thank you very much.
So much.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Tisha Temple with Recovery Alive.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. So keeping in line with Chris Ellington, he suggested that I keep it short and sweet. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, I'm expecting you to bring more energy than I know you have just a little bit.
So we did submit a request for some funding this year. So this would be our first year requesting that. So I just prepared a letter so that I could keep on track and not randomly go off on my recovery tangents. Recovery Alive, Inc. would just like to take a moment to offer our thanks to each of our county commissioners for your diligent work over the years. We thank you for your steady commitment to navigating matters on behalf of Johnston County. We want to thank the Board of Commissioners and our county staff for the time and effort that you make to support and create lasting positive effects for all of our residents. A few weeks ago, I was given an opportunity to share a presentation with you. We are an ambitious and optimistic church-based response to human brokenness rooted in the Christ-centered 12 steps. Our purpose is to construct systems of care and recovery-ready churches. I felt heard and I felt seen, and I want to say thank you from my heart for being so welcoming to me on that day. I made a statement to you on that day that I don't know how to properly ask for funding, but that I was willing to take suggestions. Each of you responded kindly with compassion for our mission. I took your suggestions and I submitted back to you an official funding request from the Johnston County General Fund. Since the last time we spoke, the American Association of Christian Counseling held a mental health coaching summit at Temple City Church in Selma. We are facing a mental health crisis, and RA is armed and ready to serve. Over the last year, we have worked hard to support 12 individuals to become certified mental health coaches. They are now equipped and willing to provide assessments and connection to support services. Soldiers, vets, first responders, and trauma nurses are amazing humans who struggle every single day. Most of the time feeling like that they do not have someone to talk to, or simply feeling like they cannot talk about it for fear of losing their jobs. We are filling the gaps for them and partnering with Reboot Recovery. Curriculum and support groups specifically for soldiers, vets, and first responders. Please join us on July the 17th for the launching of this new program. Knowing that we are better together, we are building connections with the community stakeholders like Joco Angels, who desperately want to open the doors to a social detox. Combining their love for God and others with the love of our homeless outreach director, Regina Rogers, a business plan has been developed that allows us to work together. In hopes of remaining flexible and forward-thinking, we look forward to gaining community support as we work to fill these needs. Faith communities are vital partners to have in a support network. We often house a variety of resources, from food and clothing assistance to recovery networks and harm reduction services. We function as facilitators and supporters of community coalitions by bringing in a variety of different members of support groups together on common ground. Examples include treatment providers, wraparound service providers, recovery support referral services, including criminal justice navigation, dental clinics, domestic violence resources, family, peer, and crisis support, financial assistance, food assistance, mental health and substance use treatment options, prescription assistance, shelters, homelessness resources, transportation, veterans assistance, and more. To just generally share out loud while we're here today, goals and strategies that we want to use moving forward. So strategic goals and objectives, I'm not going to read everything, as I did share with you all, and if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. But our goal 1 is to expand the reach of Recovery Alive, Inc. co-occurring substance use and mental health disorder programs. Goal 2 is to enhance programs offerings for co-occurring and substance use and mental health disorders. Goal 3 is to strengthen partnerships with local churches and community organizations. Goal 4 is to ensure organizational sustainability for co-occurring substance use and mental health disorder programs. And Goal 5, we wish to enhance support for incarcerated individuals struggling with co-occurring substance use and mental health disorders, addiction, and reintegration into society. We are asking for $165,000. $40,000 of that money would be used to open our 3rd and 4th Recovery Alive home here in Johnston County. Recovery Alive supplies that include food at our meetings, Recovery Alive handbooks, printed materials. We are asking for some of those funds to help cover a Recovery Alive home office. Sometimes I feel like I work out of the back of my Toyota. I'm not upset about that because it is outreach. We are serving the community, but it would be nice to have an address. The women have an address, however, so I'm happy about the women's home being open. Johnston County Correctional Institution and the Johnston County Jail to take in supplies to inmates that are currently in recovery programs. Continued training, as we mentioned, the AECC mental health first aid training, as well as training and development seminars for our staff, peer support training, and Red Cross Narcan first aid training, office supplies, our annual fundraising gala, and for personal expenses to include a small portion of salaries. Any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Temple?
Oh, the only question I have, Ms. Temple, is when you got down to funding sources, grant from the ABC of $75,000, how is that in relationship to the 165 you're requesting?
So we asked for funding from the ABC board to go alongside what we're already planning on doing in the community. So I listed the third and fourth house being open, but we will be using the funds from the ABC board to open the second house in Johnston County. So the second house being for men, and then the third and fourth to follow, another for men and another for women in the future.
Okay, and also on fundraising, you allocated $5,000, so how much money did you raise?
We raised a total of $76,000 this past February in our fundraising event.
So how does that, is that a budget item as a income in that amount of money, or?
I just chose to show that we are utilizing the funding to help us be able to obtain funds in other areas. Is that answering your question?
Sort of.
Okay.
So the ABC board nor your fundraising will supplant any of these funds. Is that what I'm understanding?
We just have so many things going on. We serve 300 to 500 people on a weekly basis at Recovery Alive that we don't want to ask one entity for all of the money. We would like to be able to share that burden together. So us asking money from the ABC board and asking money from the county general fund, plus the fact that we're fundraising on our own, I think that a 501c is only going to operate off of donations. And so I'm just trying to ask for a little bit from here and a little bit from there, and then being able to wholly put that together to be able to provide the services to the community.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, next up, we have a request from Preservation Johnston County, Inc. Mr. Williams?
Now it's finally my turn.
There you go.
I was just so excited.
Ready to go.
I was ready to go. I want to get in for everybody else. But good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Rob Williams, current resident of Clayton, lifelong resident of Johnston County. I am one of the 15 board members of Preservation Johnston County, which is a nonprofit corporation formerly organized last month with the following board members: Denise Joyner Bennett of Selma, Jim Best of Four Oaks, Adam Caldwell of Benson, Porter Casey of Clayton, Bennett Chapman, who's a member of the Heritage Center staff, Dr. Geddes Cohen Jr. and Shirley Cohen of Smithfield, Flora Grantham of Smithfield, Todd Johnson, Executive Director of the Johnston County Heritage Center, the Honorable Craig Olive, Betty Pope, Dr. Peggy Smith of Anger, Dr. Twyla Casey Wells of Princeton, and Susan Woodard. The goals of this organization include, among other things, the advocacy for those wishing to preserve local historic buildings, structures, and sites, working with the Johnston County Heritage Center and the State Preservation Office to maintain an updated inventory of historic properties in Johnston County, assisting owners of historic properties in getting designation by the United States Department of the Interior of the National Registry of Historic Places, accepting gifts of historically significant properties with protective covenants, and creating a fund that would allow grants or low-interest loans for local historic preservation projects. Preservation Johnston County would like to request an allocation today of $10,000 from the county. This would serve as seed money to cover some initial administrative costs and the costs of fundraising for future activities. Right now, I can say that the first goal, or the first plan, would be to update our inventory of the historic properties throughout the county so that we can identify our top needs. And then once we can identify those needs, progress forward. The Executive Director of the Johnston County Heritage Center, Todd Johnson, is here along with the Honorable Craig Olive if the board has any questions, but we certainly appreciate your consideration.
All right, any questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a request from Project Access.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Tom Williams, President and CEO of UNC Health Johnston. I'm here today to speak on behalf of Project Access. In Johnston County, nearly 14% of our population under the age of 64 are currently without medical insurance, Over 70% of those uninsured have at least one full-time worker in their family. And nearly half of all uninsured have incomes below 200% of the federal poverty level. An uninsured patient, as we know, do not seek screenings, they do not go to health checkups, they do not participate in any health promotion programs, and it often leads them to seek care. Once they do and have issues, they end up in the emergency room, which leads to life-threatening illness and increased costs for all. Project Access provides a crucial safety net for these individuals. Project Access serves area residents aged 19 to 65 without health insurance who are 250% below the federal poverty level. We've matched patients who qualify with community health workers who assist with navigating the healthcare system, finding primary care or specialist care, and educating and empowering patients to take control of their health. Participating physicians and health systems like UNC Health Johnston donate all their services without receiving any reimbursement or compensation. We're also incredibly grateful for our leadership with Dr. Marilyn Pearson, who serves on our board of directors for Project Access and also provides a collaborative partnership with Johnston County Health Department. Since its start, we've served right at 6,000 patients, extending vital care to those in need. We appreciate your past support in funding assistance, and it's been instrumental in helping us provide programs such as the Duke Endowment just recognized us as a top-performing network for helping diabetic patients in our community. Joining me today is Ms. Melissa Spees. She's our care manager of Project Access, who will talk a little bit more about this program.
Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. So I just want to talk a little bit, as Tom mentioned, Johnston County residents enrolled in Project Access, they have experienced many positive health outcomes since they've been enrolled. We did see a 50% decline in the inpatient emergency department visits, also a 59% reduction in avoidable inpatient admissions. We have facilitated over nearly 10,000 annual primary and specialty care visits with patients and their providers. We've filled over 5,000 prescriptions to help those with the chronic disease management. One of our proudest accomplishments is we have an impressive 92% of our diabetic patients enrolled in Project Access have shown an improvement in their diabetic management. That's one of the things that he was talking about that the Duke Endowment recognized us with. Funding received from the Duke Endowment allowed us to provide education classes and individualized patient support. The Johnston Health Foundation helped us offer free medications and assisted with transportation. County funding allowed us to ensure every patient has the costly diabetic supplies necessary to maintain their health. Our success is measured more than just numbers. It's measured in the lives that we change. I'm not going to share any confidential information, but I'll give you an example from one of our patients. We'll call him Stephen. He first came to Project Access about 2 years ago, and he was complaining of abdominal pain. So our team quickly got him enrolled in our program and got him set up with a primary care doctor. And after his evaluation, it was discovered that he needed further intervention with a gastroenterologist, and a screening colonoscopy was done, and a cancerous polyp was discovered. So had it not been for Project Access, the volunteer providers and hospital support, Stephen may not have survived. We recently received a thank you letter from him for his gratitude for saving his life. He also shared the news of a new job and with insurance. So he's no longer in our program, but appreciative. This is just one of the many examples of how Project Access strives to coordinate care using community resources, monetary donations for vulnerable Johnston County residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Allison Strickland. I'm the director of the Johnston Health Foundation. Our foundation exists to help make sure that funding is always available for programs like Project Access that are improving the health and wellness of this community. We come today to ask for your support once again for this invaluable program. With your investment, we can extend the life-changing benefits of the Project Access program to our most vulnerable county residents and contribute to a healthier workforce. To date, we've secured 71% of the necessary philanthropic support for fiscal year 24, and we would be grateful for an investment of $100,000, which would be used to resolve barriers of patients that they often face, like attaining medical supplies, medications, and transportation. We are grateful for your partnership, and we would appreciate your consideration on this request. I will yield my time back, but we are certainly available to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Strickland?
Mr. Chairman, I will make a comment. I'm familiar with this program, and I do believe that it fills a gap. and not only in the hospital ER, but also in our emergency medical care system, because the people need health care. If they can't walk into a physician's office, they've got to get it somewhere. And so sometimes it means they call 911, they get an ambulance, or they go show up at the emergency department. And so that's, it is filling certainly a need. And so we appreciate your work on it. Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Thank you all. All right, next up, we have a request from Reach Mentoring for Foster Kids. Ms. Stem?
Good morning. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners, for allowing me to speak. I just want to start, I handed you a list of national statistics on aged out foster youth. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of them. There are more than 4 million children in the welfare system, and 390,000 are in foster care. 25% will attempt suicide. 23,000 young adults will age out each year. 81% of these young men will become incarcerated. 71% of these young women will become pregnant before their 21st birthday, and half the children that they're going to be having will probably be placed in foster care system themselves. This one's staggering. 40% will be homeless within 18 months of aging out. And 97% of these young adults will enter into chronic poverty. So I just want to raise the awareness of this need, this crisis. My name is Susan Stem, and I'm a foster mom, I'm a school nurse, and the founder and director of the Reach Mentoring Ministry. So I became a foster parent in 2012, and I'm really nervous.
It's all right.
That's all right.
And then in 2016, as a result of seeing such a great need for these foster youth, I began the Reach Mentoring Ministry. You can look in the flyer what all we do. I don't want to take up time for that, but one of the biggest highlights is the aged out foster youth. So last week, Dr. Phil even had a program on the aged out foster youth, and one of the young ladies that was speaking had been in 26 foster homes. And I mean, that's just devastating. And I'm just thinking, if it was me and I was put in that many homes, I'd be terrified. And mental health crisis would definitely be hard for that. Usually they're given 2 trash bags to put their belongings in and just sent God knows where. When they're 18, they're supposed to be adulting, but honestly, how many of our kids, even in well-supported families, are ready to be completely unlearned at 18 or even 21? So that's national, but just let's bring it closer to Johnston County, my experiences as a foster parent. I've had a college student stay with me during her breaks, her summer breaks, and her Christmas breaks, because she had nowhere to go. She was one of the few that made it to college. Mr. Braswell here helped let her rent after I got married. She actually graduated with her master's this month, so she's one of the exceptional ones. But I had another aged out girl and her infant living in my home, and when she moved out, she wound up living in her car with her son for God knows how many years. There was a young man was in a Lynx meeting, a Lynx DSS meeting, and our group was there, and his name was RJ. I'll never forget him. And he went around to every one of us women that were there and said, "Will you please take me home? Will you please take me home? Will you please take me home? I have nowhere to go." He's surfing couches right now in Texas. Not sure what's happened with him. We helped another young lady, Jessica. She was evicted from her trailer. We put her up in a hotel for a week, but our funds are limited as well, and she's now incarcerated. One of our success stories, we have an aged out young person. She is currently at JCC in cosmetology school and working 2 jobs. We've had an apartment donated so that she can be there. It's amazing. It's messy, but she's doing it. She's doing that thing because she's having support. We've also got another program that provides life skills trainings for these kids that have never had that being in foster care. And she's in the middle of that, trying to learn how to budget. That's not easy. Not for her state, not for anybody. Anyway, but she's doing well. Before that, she was sleeping on a couch in a very unhealthy environment. So I'm also, as I said, I'm a school nurse at Triple S High School. I have 2 foster young men that are graduating on Friday. They have no place to go. They have no driver's license and no adulting skills. I don't know where they're going to go. We're having a little graduation luncheon for them on Friday, but the bottom line is they don't know what to do, and they've not been equipped. Because they've been placed so many times, no trust has been established with mentors or positive role models. And even if they elect to be in the 18 to 21-year-old program with DSS, after that, they're done. So then DSS refers them to us, and we have limited funds for housing. So recently, thanks to Patrick Harris, we had a meeting with DSS, and when I met with Scott and the assistant director, he said that this is a national crisis and housing is their greatest need, which there's nothing currently in Johnston County for them. And honestly, I know that mental health crisis has raised up such awareness, but the truth is, when you have been through all the trauma that these kids have been through, moved from place to place and already removed from the trauma, they're at the highest risk for mental health issues, truly. And even at SSS, I'm just saying, I'm more of a counselor than a nurse a lot of times because they come in and tell me things and they report, and we've had to get legal situations because of what's going on. Again, like I said, when they age out, DSS refers them to us. We're limited, but we'll do whatever we can. Statistics show that the youth are sleeping in the DSS offices. Currently, there's a young man this weekend. He's been in DSS office all weekend. I keep getting emails as a foster parent. If you can't take these kids, they're going to be in DSS office all weekend. They're sleeping in jails, ER rooms. They're homeless. And even recently, there were some kids sleeping near Golden Corral garbage dumpsters right here in Smithfield. I'm not really asking for money. I just really want to raise awareness to this plight. And let's think about their outcomes are drug addiction, crime, prostitution, homelessness, sex trafficking, mental health issues, and often suicide. Let's think about the cost to our community. You know, we're looking at mental health, but I feel like this is a lost population, an unmet population of that we really need to reach them. They're our next generation. And they're having kids. I went to a DSS meeting a couple weeks ago, and there was a young lady, 18 to 21. She's pregnant, and she's so happy about being pregnant, and we're always want to rejoice about a child, but she's not living in her own place. She's not stable herself. It's not their fault, but they have huge mental issues. They suffer from anxiety, depression, suicide, like I said. So recently, through all of this and us seeing the great need, we were introduced to the Day-by-Day Treatment Facility Center. It's a hot item. Everybody wants it. It's not even listed. But anyway, it's been sitting empty since 2012. I don't know what the next step is for us, or even for our community, but I just feel like we need to address this issue with the mental health issues and just not overlook them because they're floundering. They're aging out every single day, and they don't have the life skills. They've not had parents to teach them and to train them how to budget, how to even make phone calls, how to text, how to show up for a job and not just call out because you've got an ache. So we're doing our very best to reach these kids. If you will, look at the flyers whenever you get a chance of different things. We're doing a lot more than that, but I just wanted to thank you for letting me share this healthcare crisis and this mental health crisis and just for this population. So thank you very much. Do you have any questions? Or?
I was just going to say thank you for raising the awareness. One of the things we hear foster care and we think, well, let me say I think of younger children and not so much what happens when they get out. Yes. So when we had our talk, that was really eye-opening to me about that. Yeah, this entire population, as you just said.
It's amazing, and honestly, not even the little ones, and that's the ones I'm talking about. But even just a couple years ago, there was 4 siblings found on Highway 95, all had lice, brought into care, and no one wanted them. And at 8 o'clock at night, I went over and did lice treatments because I worked at the health department during that time. And the little, I think she was 4 years old, had just been sexually molested as well. And she looked at me and she goes, "Where am I going to sleep tonight?" And I'm just thinking, that should not happen in Johnston County. We have too many people. Let's raise that awareness. If one person from every church agreed to say, I'm going to take one child in and the church rally around them, we'd wipe out the need. And I'm saying good foster families too, because not all of them are good. But anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Susan.
Yes, sir.
I guess by raising awareness, you and I had talked, and your needs are mostly space, a home, sometimes, and you had mentioned the Day-by-Day Center that everybody seems to be interested in.
Yes.
But so if there's anybody out there listening, or anybody in the room that knows, or anybody has the contact, you want to work on that, don't you? You want to get to
yes, we need
that's your
housing.
first need, right?
And I think housing is a huge need. Now, is it messy? Yes. So we want to bring in life skills training. We want to bring in house parents because you can't just let foster kids, that have had no training go into a facility. So there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle that we're working on right now. Angeline is one of our board members. She's actually She's actually specifically going into the housing realm, but she was advised to go for profit instead of a nonprofit. So I know when I spoke to you, Mr. Harris, that that was not going to be a county funded necessarily, but it's just a huge need to help. And if we had a facility that they were there, we could actually help develop those skills so that they can be responsible citizens, that maybe county commissioners would have, you know? But if they don't have a chance, they don't know it. They don't know what they don't know. So we're trying to come alongside, build relationships with them. Angelina's reached out to DSS director again several weeks ago to try and figure out, because there's money attached to the Foster Youth that would help fund this as well, but we're still waiting on that.
Thank you for your work on all this.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, next up we have Joe Malazzo with Regional Transportation Alliance here with a request on the fast transit study. Mr. Malazzo, welcome.
Hey, good morning.
Good to see you in Johnston County.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Rick, you get that one slide up there, that presentation I brought. I also have my thumb drive email as well. What's the best way to do that? Presentation deck. Just a minute. Should be on since that thing works out pretty quick. And if not, should be in your email has to too. That's easier. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be fine. Perfect. I'll do it.
Joe, it's customary for presenters to do a little song and dance while they get the thing loaded up.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm the first time here. I'd actually like this to go well.
We'll give you a pass on this one.
I'd like this to go well, otherwise I won't. You just control L on that. And then you just page, if you could just page down, if I just move that arrow down, that'd be good. So, Mr. Chairman, good to see you, commissioners as well. My name's Joe Malazzo. I'm with an organization called RTA, which is the Regional Transportation Alliance. It's the voice of the business community regionally on transportation issues, and I'm happy to talk with you about the FAST study. I'll just say arrow down. Oh, can I do, will it do that? Oh, I don't bother you anymore. We're good. That's exactly right. So again, we've been around for over 20 years, over 150 member companies and organizations, including over 25 chambers of commerce in 13 counties in central and eastern North Carolina, including Benson and what's now Triangle East and Clayton as well. We're a private-public partnership. We work closely with our elected leaders, our transportation partners, to try to get transportation success on that. Going straight to it, there was a FAST study that we initiated 3 years ago now, coordinated by the business community and work in cooperation and concert with NCDOT and Go Triangle and the Turnpike Authority, 50-50 funding on that. The gist of it, the outcomes came on there. There was a vision plan for that. That's the link to the final study, but you can find it easier if you need to. Just Googling NCDOT FAST Vision will bring that up. And that talked about a vision for using the existing freeway and street network for transit options, try to leverage that more logically. Julie White, who's the Deputy Secretary, spoke very favorably of it, appreciated the business community working on this, initiating that study effort. One of the main things about it, if I can just go back to this slide for just a second, it talked about, one, changing the roadway design manual the state uses based on transit as a catalyst as a result of this, and also what's called the Complete Streets Policy. So it was a good study, it was a good vision, got us part of the way there. The reason why I'm here today is as we've looked, as the growth has continued in Johnston County and Wake County and the entire metropolitan area, we know we've got some fundamental needs for mobility. As a representative of the business community, these are our big keys. Funding for our airport regionally in terms of sustainable funding for our national airport, regional transit, freeway system, innovations, and being responsible with modernizing revenues for highways and streets. This conversation is mostly about transit, but this study is about making it work for all users, not just people who are in the transit system. So FAST Study 2.0 would be this, making our freeways and regional boulevards what we're calling transit-friendly, transit-ready, making it ready for the priorities for the transit vehicles to go around, congestion at the time they need to, developing more BRT corridors. There's already proposed BRT corridor that'll come here in county to Clayton right now. I know you're familiar with that. Something called smart freeway corridors, which is simply using technology to be a little more cost effective, and then formulating a regional vision, goals, and brand for transit. So this 2.0 study will be launched this summer. RTA, again, is our organization. NCDOT
and several other partners. On the next slide will show that. It'll be a broader geographic area than the initial one. If you looked at that earlier map, it was mostly Wake and Durham counties, a little bit into Johnston, a little bit into Orange, focused on freeways and what we'll call the regional boulevards, which are main roads that are not freeways today. Some selected emphasis corridors, including I-40, things called transit priority shoulders, cost-effective ways to help buses move forward a little bit faster, actually getting BRT to the airport, getting transit to the airport. We already have bus on shoulder here in Johnston County and then over into Wake and Durham. Smart freeways, again, prioritizing transit, but benefiting all users, and again, rapid implementation. So BRT to RDU or transit to RDU, the airport has shown full support of that, trying to see that BRT connection. We need that. It always comes up. How we get into the airport via transit, the answer would be bus rapid transit, or as we call it, buses resembling trains. That's the way we describe it. Current partners for the study, again, our organization, RTA, representing the business community. We're going to contribute $100,000 to the study. DOT will manage and help coordinate the study, so it will be a DOT study. Cary, Chapel Hill, Durham, and Raleigh are all given between 50 and 100. Durham, Wake, and Orange each between 50 and 100 is their intention, and also the two MPOs in the market. Any investment the county might make would go towards NCDOT directly, then they in turn would hire the consultant. So it's a request to make the partnership a little bit larger and go beyond the 3 counties that you've seen there. That's it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions? So help me through this. Well, we got a lot of acronyms, well, not a lot, but we got, so we're doing the Southeast area study. Our Campo's doing that now.
Sure are.
We're getting started or getting close to starting on our own countywide transportation plan. So how does this dovetail into those two?
Well, sure. And first of all, those studies are going to be very good. I mean, what Campo's doing with that Southeast area gives you a little more details, and you got a countywide transit plan, as our transportation plan, as I understand it. This is a much larger study, and this is looking at infrastructure in Wake, Johnston, Durham, Orange, Chatham, and other areas. Right now, the outer scope of this would be I-40 going the whole way to the 95 interchange, the whole way down, I think it's 332 or 328, I should say. Other freeways nearby here, and this would allow us to look at, or the business community requesting it for DOT, to look at, having the consultant look at all of the corridors we have today, and the ones that are coming too, 540 under construction, other ones, look at it and say, how do we make it more transit ready in a cost-effective way? I mean, the whole premise behind the study is your freeways and your streets. We have them today, we're building them, let's leverage that resource. That's better for the taxpayer, let's make it more cost-effective as we move forward with it. And again, it would be a multiple county area, and the outcome of it, or the action, would be what are some specific changes we can make to TIP projects or things of that nature, or some new projects that we can say that would help transit while benefiting all users. This is certainly a pro-transit, which means it's ultimately a workforce study, but it's also pro other vehicles, which are primarily going to be automobiles for the foreseeable future, of course, and how do we make things better for them too. So it's still operational congestion relief for them, but again, it's a much broader geography.
All right, any other questions?
I do. Would it also include coming up with suggestions or recommendations for funding formulas for the DOT?
Funding formulas for DOT may be a little bit different from this one here. This would be about funding for the projects that we're talking about specifically here. We are actually working on a whole separate conversation about funding for the department, but that's different than this.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
All right. Any other questions? Joe, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Come and see us more often.
I'm happy to do it. So I'm going to see you next month as well.
That's right.
So we appreciate you speaking at our upcoming event. Thank you very much. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, that concludes the list of folks we had up to speak, but is there anyone else here wishing to speak on our budget? Dr. Lindquist, come forward.
Morning. Morning, everybody. Vern Lindquist from Johnston Community College. Just wanted to express publicly my appreciation for the long-standing and substantial support that the college receives from the commissioners. It's appreciated, and we appreciate the hard work you put into all the requests that are given to you. I was listening to many of them, and I don't know how you say no to anything. They're all very worthy. I thought I would share with you some preliminary good news. Our summer enrollment is up almost 9%. It's a very big deal for us, and getting those the 400 FTEs from that will help us as we try to increase the amount of money we get from the state. But I think largely because of two things. First of all, increased marketing that the college has been able to do, and certainly the commissioner's promise, which gives us a healthy way to hook that marketing. Our fall enrollment is trending upwards as well. Those numbers are much more important than the summer numbers because we're dealing with many more students. We're up between 5 and 6% right now, and about 70% of our enrollment capacity has already been reached. So this is very good news. If we can hold on to that, and I expect that we will for the fall, this is a very exciting trend for the college, and it will ultimately be a very good thing for the county. As you know, one of our goals is for the approximately 1,200 Johnston County residents who go the wrong way on I-70 to stay here, both for their education and for their employment. So we're doing our best to help to make those things a reality. So anyway, thank you very much.
Any questions, comments?
I do have a comment. Dr. Lincoln, we appreciate your leadership. The community college is such an asset to this county. It's just a tremendous resource for our residents, and so we appreciate your leadership and looking forward to seeing great things yet to come, and thank you for accomplishing the great things that you have thus far.
Vice Chairman, thank you very much for your kind words.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I thought it was on the list, but maybe I wasn't. I'm Kelly Bloss with Joco Angels, and I had a presentation loaded. Thank you. If you would just
How
give
do
me.
you spell your last name?
It's B-L-A-S, Bloss.
Oh, easy enough.
Thank you. So if you would just give me just one moment to share with you the reason that I'm here today, and that is for the people of Johnston County who have lost their children to an overdose. And so I'll just run through these real quick if you would just take a moment to let me honor them. First one is Evan Millard Batts, and he graduated from South Johnston High School. Michael Dillon Tripp, North Johnston. Joshua Lewis Barefoot, South Johnston. Justin Cole Bennett, West Johnston High School. Ryan Taylor Moore. My son David James Steen, West Johnston High School. Jonathan Barefoot, apologize. Cole Alexander Fox, West Johnston. Samuel Nathan Zaleski, Penn Foster. Carlton Trey Strickland. Jordan Chance Toppings, West Johnston High School. Dakota Rayanne Strickland, South Johnston High School. Cody Alexander Taylor, North Johnston High School. Dara Oxendine, South Johnston High School. Thomas Edward Mundinger, West Johnston High School. Timothy Wade Rayner, South Johnston High School. Tommy Kincaid. Machiko Ladeja Farrar Duff, South Johnston High School. Trevor Garrett Bajorling, West Johnston High School. William Patrick McCormick. Christopher Manis. Brianna Lauren Wilson, Faith Education Academy. Bobby Tyler Hayes. Caleb David Zimmerman, West Johnston High School. And Joshua Gerald Clifton, West Johnston High School. So the people that you're looking at there have passed away from a drug overdose or a death related to drugs. And my name is Kelly Bloss, and I'm the president of Joco Angels, Opioid Awareness and Support. I'm here today with my husband, Patrick. Joco Angels is a nonprofit birthed in 2019 from a tragedy in my own life and the lives of other Johnston County parents. We lost our 19-year-old son, David, on September 28, 2017. David died from an intentional oxycodone overdose after struggling with mental health issues his entire life. After David's death and dealing with my own grief, I met with other parents who had lost children to overdose and drug-related deaths, and we found that we all had the same experience in common, the overwhelming lack of resources available to us when we were trying to help our children. We could not save our own children, but we could fight to make a difference in the lives of other families and people in our community who struggle with addiction. Joco Angels has presented opioid awareness at many Johnston County schools in the past 4 years. We provide resources and support to teachers and school counselors and administrators who have students who are struggling with addiction or have addicted loved ones in their families. We have a parent support group called Parents of Addicted Loved Ones, or PAL, that meets weekly in Benson. PAL is a national organization that provides educational curriculum and support to parents. 3 of our JOCO Angels leadership team members, including myself, have taken the PAL course, the course that PAL offers to become facilitators of this support group. And the national organization provided us with curriculum and resources free of charge so that we could support Johnston County families. We also created a resource library and network personally with area recovery organizations so that we could pick up the phone and call on help immediately when a family or addicted person reaches out for help to stop using. By the grace of God and this community, we have been able to send over 70 people to long-term treatment like Hope Center Ministries, or pay rent for their sober living transitional housing to places like Recovery Alive Growing Grace, or in Smithfield or Oxford Homes. In every single instant, we donate in honor of one of our angels, those that you've seen on the screen. Our angels are the young people of Johnston County who have lost their lives to overdose or drug-related deaths, and their families allow us to honor their child by trying to save another life. JOCO Angels is completely supported by donations. We have one fundraiser each year, which is a Ride for Recovery, hosted and sponsored by Freedom Biker Church in Benson. In 2022, we raised over $32,000 between the ride and individual donations, and with the funding we already had in our account, we sponsored people and other nonprofit organizations in Johnston County in the amount of $37,000, including a $10,000 donation to Growing Grace Sober Living Home, to ensure that this resource was made available to our community. JOCO Angels is completely volunteer-led, and we have support not only from the school board, but from Johnston County EMS, many area defense attorneys, and Johnston County Opioid Task Force. I share our history with you to help you understand why I stand before you today. As JOCO Angels has become a leading resource for families to call in times of crisis, or when a person is ready for help, the #1 roadblock that we have come into is getting people into detox. We can connect people with long-term residential treatment or sober living. However, they're not eligible to start these programs until they have an opportunity to detox from the dangerous substances they are using. My husband and I have picked up people all over the county and driven them to detox in Fayetteville, Greenville, Raleigh, and Durham. Unfortunately, as the drug problems in all of our counties increase and the drugs become more lethal, many of the resources we have depended on for the past 4 years are now closing their doors to out-of-county residents. As people of faith, it's very difficult for us to have to say to a person seeking help that they have to say that they're homeless in another county in order to receive detox. We're also finding that if a person has any type of Medicaid or insurance that originates outside of the county where the detox is located, they are immediately released from the program in 1 to 2 days. Many of these Johnston County residents end up back on the streets or back home using again. I want to say that I'm very proud of the work that our community has done and continues to do to support people who are affected by substance use disorder. We have seen more towns, churches, and communities step up and open recovery meetings, provide medicated assisted treatment, and just be willing to talk about the drug problems that we have. Now is the time to do more. None of the programs or resources we currently have can be accessed by the addicted person until they are detoxed from the drug they are chained to. We have a safe, we need to have a safe, open place for people to come, lay their heads, receive peer counseling, and support and be monitored for withdrawal symptoms for 5 to 7 days before we connect them to the next step in their recovery. I personally received a call from the health department last week when a man reached out asking for help to get off a 6-year fentanyl and cocaine addiction. The health department had no resources for detox and didn't know how to connect this person to care. I was able to get him into detox in Greenville. However, the point is, we should be able to help our own. Another mother last week was turned away from a Johnston County emergency room when her son was in full withdrawal from fentanyl. He lay in our ER hallway, vomiting and shaking, until she called me and drove him to detox in Fayetteville. Unfortunately, Fayetteville found that he had Medicaid in another county and released him the next day. The young man ended up walking away from detox, and the mother still has not located him. This is unacceptable, and it's avoidable if we step up and care for our own residents. Johnston County can no longer rely on the services of other county agencies to help the people that live here. I'm asking you to consider helping us by offering funding to either JoCo Angels or Recovery Alive to secure a building to provide this much-needed service to our community. We want this to be a free, 24/7 walk-in place where people can find acceptance, compassion, love, and appropriate resources to help them begin the process of recovery. JoCo Angels has the people committed to volunteer with retired nurses, peer support specialists, mental health counselors, and people who just want to love on and feed and care for others because they have received this healing themselves. We fully support Recovery Alive, Inc. and have committed to partner with them in creating this safe space, not just for detox, but for ongoing recovery support services in our community. We want other nonprofits and businesses to be a part of this effort, and we believe that the faith and recovery community as a whole can pull this off and do it well. We want to be a model for the rest of our state, much like Healing Transitions is in Raleigh to us. And so the opportunity, and it's funny that we know that God is going to provide a resource for both places, but we're also interested in the day-by-day treatment center. We are looking at that with Recovery Alive, Inc. If we were to request funding, which I haven't had an opportunity yet because this fell into our lap last week, but we would ask that we would be able to split the cost with Recovery Alive, Inc. for getting that treatment center, which is walk-in ready to receive. And so the cost would be $14,500 a month for the full lease amount and the taxes on the building. And we would ask for half of that, and Recovery Alive has agreed to partner with us in order to pay the other half. And so more to come in the budget. We do have a planning proposal already prepared for that, and we will send that to you. But we're just here to let you know that this is a great need, and we're losing resources in other counties, and now we don't have places to take these people that are calling and saying, I want to stop. So I really appreciate your time and being willing to listen to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Bloss?
I'm going to leave you with our resources.
Okay. We'll leave you. All right. Anyone else here to speak to the budget in the public hearing? All right. Seeing no one, and we don't have any emails on this topic, so I will now close the public hearing. We'll announce that we have a special called meeting on the budget on Monday, June the 12th at 6 o'clock here. And then we also anticipate that on Monday, June the 19th at our 6 o'clock meeting, we will adopt our budget at that time. So if you'll just make note of those two dates if you're interested in coming. I will now move on to the next item, which is also a public hearing, system development fee analysis update, and Ms. Chandra Farmer, our Public Utilities Director, will come forward and address us, and I will now open the public hearing for this item. Ms. Farmer?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am going to give a brief overview of the system development fee study and methodology of kind of where we are right now on this analysis. This is required per the rules, the statute that governs system development fees for municipalities. So as you may recall, a system development fee, it's a one-time fee that's applied only to new system customers. And the governing law was from House Bill 436 in 2017, and it gives local governments this authority to charge these water and sewer system development fees. You may recall this essentially replaced in the past what we would term assessment fees or capacity fees for retail customers. The system development fee is the fee and the terminology that we're required to now use under these rules. And the system development fee, it recovers capital costs that we incur to provide additional system capacity for new customers. So essentially, we've got growth paying for growth. Our new customers, when they connect, they are paying and buying capacity in our transmission and treatment facilities for water and sewer. We initially completed this the first analysis in compliance with the new rules in 2018, and we included that in our 2019 fiscal year budget, and then we updated the study again for fiscal year 20. The statute outlines 3 methodologies that you can use to calculate the system development fees. I'm not going to read all this to you, but the county uses the combined cost method. That is the method that we have chosen to pursue for this. The procedures for this: you're required to utilize a financial professional or qualified licensed professional engineer to do the calculation. The county has contracted both times that were all three times since we have worked on our system development fee analysis with Wildan Financial Services. They are a financial professional that meets this criteria. The system development fee analysis is required to be posted online for 45 days. We posted our analysis for this year on April the 11th. We also posted an amended document with some changes that we proposed on May 23rd. If modifications can be made to the analysis during the review period and beyond, but prior to it being adopted as needed. We're required to have a public hearing, which is today, June 5th. And the system development fee determined has to be adopted by resolution or ordinance, and it must be published in our annual budget. And the statute also requires us to update this analysis every 5 years at a minimum. So the process for determining the system development fees, the first thing that we do is look at recoverable costs. The first component of recoverable cost is our existing assets. We inventory, we do maintain an inventory of our existing assets, water and sewer. Of course, this is our supply facilities, treatment facilities, transmission mains, booster stations, those kinds of things. So we inventory that. And you can see we have this is the inventory of our existing assets on water and wastewater. Then the other recoverable cost as part of this calculation and methodology is our planned assets. Our planned assets are our capital improvements project. So you may recall we do have a capital improvements plan that was updated in 2022. We've tweaked that plan and provided a few updates to it here for this 2023 update. Most of those updates are related to anticipated project costs. Of course, the capital improvements plan, the portion of that we're most interested in for system development fees is the capacity expansion projects. We have to exclude from the system development fee calculation, of course, projects that are funded from loans or grants, not loans, from grants or direct appropriations. So those are fees that we wouldn't recoup from users because it's something that was given to us that we don't have to pay back. Also, we exclude anything that's related to developer contributions, developer constructed facilities, rehab and replacement projects, and operational and efficiency improvements. Those types of projects don't add to system capacity. So that's not included in your system development fees. That's something that's generally included in your operation and maintenance and your user charges. The county's 20-year capital improvement plan is included here. This is the first piece, which is our water supply. This is you can see it's a large amount. We have updated this with the long-term water supply planning that we talked about. I think last month we talked about our long-term water supply plan. So that's included in this updated plan, and is the reason for the the cost increase that you may notice from the 2022 plan to the 2023 plan. The next piece of our capital improvements plan is the water transmission facilities. This is the full listing of all of those that are included in that plan. So you can see our total water capital improvements plan for supplies, treatments, supplies, and transmission is $676 million right now. That's, of course, just our current estimate. The wastewater portion of our capital improvements plan includes the collection system. That's the listing. This is this first listing of projects here. This is collection and transmission. And then also this, you may notice as you're looking at these capital improvements plans, some of the projects listed on here are operational type improvements and rehab and replacement projects. And you'll see how we back those out as I move forward on this. The last piece of our capital improvements plan is our wastewater treatment projects. This is, of course, our all projects that are directly related to treatment. And that brings our total capital improvements plan, when you look at water and sewer for 20 years, to $959 million potentially, based on our current estimates.
And again, that includes the long-term water that we turned last month, that new number?
Yes, that does. That includes that fully, everything that we have for 20 years, and that includes that project, the first 3 phases of that project. So in moving forward with the system development fee calculation, as I mentioned, we've got our recoverable assets, which is our planned assets. Here is a summary. This is the summary of the 20-year capital improvements plan. When you take that and you combine that with the other recoverable assets I discussed earlier, which is our existing assets, this is the combination of those. The next piece of the puzzle, or I shouldn't say puzzle, the next piece of the calculation required is a debt service or CIP and CIP credit. So the statute outlines we're required to utilize a debt service credit to essentially prevent new customers from paying debt twice. You don't want them paying debt on the facility when they pay their system development fee, and then that debt also be enrolled into their monthly user charges that they pay once they become a customer. So that's the reason this debt service credit is required as part of the calculation. There are criteria for it to be equal to our outstanding principal remaining on all outstanding utility-related debt as of the date of the analysis. So as you know, we have a lot of projects moving nonstop, especially right now. We've got a lot of ongoing projects. So this part of the reason the study has been updated a couple times. We had to add that amendment online, and then it even looks a little bit different what I'm presenting to you today than what's available online right now. It's just refining these numbers as we bid projects, as we know what they are, and as any of those numbers change.
I thought your comparison to a puzzle was appropriate, but the puzzle pieces are changing constantly. So
it really is right now with all the projects that we have going on. That is certainly happening, and we want to make sure when we adopt this, the date we adopt this, that we are in compliance with what the statute requires, and we utilize our best available data and current actual bid prices. Also, House Bill 436 requires the credit shall not be less than 25% of your aggregate capital improvements. So you saw that number of capital improvements. We had a pretty large number there. So we have to make sure we give the appropriate credit for this calculation as we move forward. So that brings us to the net recoverable assets. This table outlines those combined facilities that I discussed as far as our existing assets, the assets that are recoverable that are in our capital improvements plan, and then subtracts out those required debt service and CIP credit. The next piece of the calculation requires us to identify system capacities. So as I stated earlier, we want new customers to pay for their proportionate share of system capacity. That requires us to find out, identify what is our system capacity and what is their proportionate share. So our fee is generally based on a unit cost of capacity, which again requires us to identify our treatment and transmission system capacities. We use various factors, but it requires us to identify what are maximum daily flows versus average daily flows, how much capacity is in our system. We have to quantify non-revenue water. We have to look at inflow and infiltration for sewer. And then we determine a level of service and equivalent residential unit in order to determine a per unit fee, particularly which is how we look at our residential customers generally. This is the final analysis for the system development fee for water. You can see we kind of go through this process of we look at our system capacity, we look at the non-revenue water, there's an adjustment for that. There's an adjustment for our transmission to treatment capacity, and then we come down to the cost per gallon. Then we have an assumed level of service to break this down to a residential ERU. And what this one comes to is a cost of $6,550 as a maximum system development fee for residential development for water. This is your one-time capacity fee. And when you equate that to a per gallon number, it's $28.54 per this calculation. Now, I'll remind you, this calculation is, this is what is the maximum amount that we would be allowed to charge per the statute. It's not necessarily what's required to be charged. And also, a big portion of this is our capital improvements plan. You know, this long-term water supply does have a large impact on what these fees look like. And one thing we have to keep in mind is it's important to continue to update this routinely. I would say we would plan to do that more than every 5 years, because those projections on these future projects, what we think these future water supply projects cost, those can change as we get more into our studies and more into the, closer to the design phase. So we'll want to make sure we keep that updated as we move forward. The sewer calculation's a little different. This one's unusual and maybe good news for some. As we go through the calculation for sewer, we actually have identified a per unit cost of $4,020 per residential connection. Our current rate's $4,090. So based on the new analysis required and some of the projects that have moved from in the CIP to actual debt service now, it has actually reduced the maximum amount we're allowed to require, to charge for our sewer system development fee. So I put together a quick proposed plan for the water system development fee. We will need to adopt a fee with the county budget that we plan to implement next year. Certainly, this fee, there's a recommended increase associated with this fee. I would recommend we adopt this one October 1st of 2023. And we don't have to adopt what we're going to do for future fiscal years. This is just a potential plan for future fiscal years. But we will have to identify a number for 23-24. And you can see I recommend that we go from the $27.50 per unit to the $37.50 per unit for next fiscal year. For the sewer, again, the recommendation and per the analysis that we should reduce that fee from $4,090 per unit to $4,020 per unit. I recommend we move forward with that. And I should really correct this slide and say I think that needs to be effective July 2023. We would not, July 1, 2023, because it's a recommended decrease in the rate and we know it should be per the analysis, we would not want to keep it at the higher rate for a longer period of time. The other piece of this calculation is our capacity fees. Our capacity fees are what we charge to our bulk customers to purchase water and sewer capacity. It's similar to our system development fees, except for it is to serve our bulk customers. And when we go through the calculation to look at it for our bulk customers, it's only fair to remove all those projects that we're building to serve our retail customers that do not provide service to our bulk customers. So we've got an alternative, I shouldn't say an alternative, I have the calculation here, very similar to the system development fee calculation, but it's for the bulk customers, where we take out all of those projects that are not applicable to the bulk customers, and also taking out cost factors. There's some unknown things that go into our retail one, where we have this cost factor for non-revenue water, and we also have a factor for sewer inflow and infiltration. Since we charge our bulk customers based on actual meter readings, we don't have those unknowns. We know what the real numbers are, so we should not add in any kind of factors like that that would increase the cost. 20-year CIP, this is the water supply, water treatment and water supply CIP. It's essentially the same as the retail one. What looks different is when you get to the transmission piece of that puzzle, there are a lot of projects that we have on our plan specifically to aid our retail customers that do not aid, that would not help with bulk service. So we would remove those from that calculation. The same for the sewer side. On the transmission side, a lot of those projects that are, well, all of the projects that are specifically for retail customers, we would take out of that calculation. Then when you go to the sewer treatment piece, actually all of those would benefit our bulk customers, just like on the water side. Our supplies and treatment essentially benefit retail and bulk customers. But as you go through the calculation for the bulk customers, you can see for water, when you take out the cost factors, the cost per gallon is reduced from the cost per gallon for the retail side. The cost per gallon was just over $28 on the retail side. It's just over $24 on the bulk side. I'll remind you, right now, our bulk capacity fee for water is $7 per gallon. So this is, of course, the maximum. I wouldn't say the maximum amount we're allowed to charge, because there's no statute or no rule that defines how we calculate this capacity fee to our bulk customers. But certainly we would not want to exceed the results of this calculation. Sewer is very similar to the retail side. The number came down slightly. We currently charge $11 a gallon to our bulk sewer customers. We would recommend reducing that down to the $10.68 per gallon. This is a recommendation of the plans for capacity fee adjustments for bulk customers. And again, I should not have labeled that last column as max allowable, but we would not want to exceed that number. There's not an allowable amount because there's no statute that governs this. But also, the other thing I would note is the same as our retail recommendation. We would want to, because of the sewer capacity fee adjustment decreasing, we would want to go ahead and implement that July 1 of 2023 to allow for that decrease. The proposed adjustment for the water, you can see, of course, just like retail customers, a staged implementation where we continue to make sure we do this analysis at least every 3 years, if not sooner, in case that capital improvement plan changes, that we know that we're on the right track. We would not want to exceed where we really need to be. So the recommendation for 23-24 for water bulk capacity fees is $10. And in order to move forward, we would request the board to consider this system development fee study further on June 19th. We would ask for the board to adopt this updated capital improvements plan that's included with this system development fee analysis. We would ask you to adopt the system development fee analysis, and then we would also ask to adopt the retail system development fees and the bulk capacity fees for fiscal year 23-24. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. I know this is a public hearing if anyone else wants to make comments as well.
Any questions for?
Just a brief question. You mentioned earlier about your existing inventory. That's fixtures in the ground. What about supplies on hand above ground? Reams of pipes, fittings, things of that nature. Is that one of those recoverable?
Inventory that's not in use in the system is not included in that analysis.
Okay. And the other thing is, on that chart you showed the proposed cost for the water at 3/4 inch, typical residential. What about those other, it went on down to 2 inch and 4 inch. When would you ever come into that if it's not bulk?
So sometimes commercial, institutional customers sometimes want a larger water service.
And that wouldn't be bulk in your...
No, that would not be bulk. And those are, you can see the little note at the bottom where the utilities director has the discretion to apply a per unit cost per gallon per day.
No, you can see the little note at the bottom.
Sorry.
We can see it in the handout.
Hopefully you can see it in the handout.
I'm with you, Ted.
We currently have that provision now in case for some reason a commercial customer needs a larger service and that they can prove that they're really not going to have that demand on our system, then we can use that alternative analysis. But we certainly want to ensure customers apply for and obtain the size service that they need, and not anything in excess that could put more demand on our system than what's really necessary.
Okay.
Andrew, I have a question, and you probably covered it. I just want to make sure I understand it. You've got the proposed effective date October 1. What's the reason of that versus July 1 when we adopt all the other fees?
Well, for the bulk capacity fees, we usually always give we give our customers 90-day notice. Okay. We make sure to do that for our bulk customers, and it also does the same for our retail customers. It gives people time to plan for it and know what's coming, particularly someone who might have a large project already under construction and underway. They don't pay this fee till they apply for service, so it gives them some time.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
All right. This is a public hearing, so if there's Anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak, please come forward and state your name and address. Looks like there's no one coming forward to do that. So I'll turn it over to the board. Any additional questions or comments?
Startling numbers.
We have big numbers.
Yeah.
All right. Since there's no action requested at this time, and it looks like we need to make a decision on the 19th at our next meeting, so I will now close the public hearing. And we will move on to the next item, which is contract for permitting and land use software presented by Shane Hudson, our Inspections Department Director. Mr. Hudson, good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
I will just say, I hope that your presentation is not as lengthy as all the stuff that was in our
Mine's
agenda
going to be
pack.
short and sweet, I got a feeling. Basically, before we use a contract to replace our current permitting software, which is in excess of 20 years old, my department, as well as other departments, has had numerous contractors come in, look at different software, and this was one we have chosen, which pretty much closes the gap more so with the communication between multiple departments. Our department, public utilities, planning, environmental health, fire marshal's office. And we feel that's the best choice, and for the public as well, because it gives us a portal for the public to do online submittals, applications, electronic review, and puts us kind of where we need to be.
All right, any questions?
This in your budget?
This money is already appropriated between departments, yet. We're not asking for additional funding.
Thank you.
What other local governments use this system?
None currently in North Carolina. There's some in Virginia and a bunch out west that's using this. The original company we looked at up front that everybody suggested, everybody else was getting off the bandwagon.
Okay.
My concern on something like this is unexpected fallout, unexpected consequences. But after talking with Jeff Howard, our IT guru, I feel comfortable with it, if he feels comfortable with it.
Yeah, Jeff's played a big part in trying to help us vet the backside of it, the security and the software.
All right. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the contract with Clarity Cloud Incorporated for software subscription and licensing.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. We'll have aye. There we go. We got the remote aye in there. Thank you, Commissioner Stevens. The motion is approved. All right, next up we have a presentation from Scott Walston from the DOT Transportation Planning Branch on our Metropolitan Planning Organization options. Let's put it that way.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'm going to recognize a few people right now. Jamal Olive, he's our director. He's passing out some handouts, and don't freak out that the handouts, I'm going to go through this stuff very quickly. Also, I want to recognize Elena Cook. She is actually my direct supervisor, and Chris Lucasina, he's with the Capital Area MPO, and I'm going to turn it over to him at the end of my presentation. So, it's right here, the down button. Okay. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. Again, I'm going to have a lot of information. I'm going to quickly go through these slides. So while they're digging it up on here, I'm on slide number 3. It's on the second page of my handout. Basically saying what is a metropolitan planning organization, and it's basically it's fairly mandated, and it's a funded for areas that are over 50,000, urban areas that are over 50,000 in population. So there's 19 of those in the state, and the next one, I really need the map.
Which one is it here? Scott, there is the song and dance option.
I do not have the song and dance ready to go. Now, Joe Malazzo didn't do it, so I'm not going to do it.
We'll give you the benefit of the next time.
All right. I think you've got it. So I can click. Oh, okay.
There we go.
Anyway, so you'll see up there, there's the map of some of the urban areas within Wake and Johnston counties. And the big purple area, that is the Raleigh urban area. And you see it goes into multiple counties. Matter of fact, part of it goes into Johnston County. And you see that it's kind of a greenish area. That's the Clayton urban area, which includes Clayton, parts of Johnston County, and also Archer Lodge. And the cross-hatched area that's kind of tan color, that's the current Campo metropolitan planning area. So, and what I really want you to make sure you see in there is that there's some dashed lines, that's the county boundaries. So anyway, this is a very important map, and I will zoom in a little bit for the next slide, which is basically this is the Clayton urban area, which has a population of a little over 50,000, and is those three areas included, which is most of the town of Clayton, Archer Lodge, and parts of the unincorporated areas of Johnston County. So now the designation of an MPO is it's agreement between the local units of general purpose government and between the governor. Now, something the governor has done is he's delegated that authority to the NCDOT secretary. So basically, in here, you see we have to have at least 75% of the affected population to form an MPO. So, and I'm going to slip to the next slide. So you'll see these are the percentages of each area within the metropolitan planning organization. So, percentages of each area within the urban area. Excuse me there. So the Clayton municipal area is about 50%. Johnston County is about 46%. To form a new metropolitan planning organization, both of them would have to approve of that. They don't have to be in agreement to do that. Otherwise, they would stay a member of the capital area metropolitan planning organization. So that's a very important point. Both got to agree to form a new metropolitan planning organization. The next slide is the boundary. So, and I'll go ahead and flip to the next one. The metropolitan planning area, the MPA, which is the boundary, it's basically that existing urbanized area, that area that I showed you in the other slide, and it's an area expected to be urban in about the next 20 years. And there we go. And it's gone away. Oh, here we go. So, the next couple of slides, and for the sake of time, and I know y'all have been here for a couple of hours, I'm not going to do a deep dive into major funding streams, but there's some big takeaways I want you to take away from the next two slides. There's two columns on each of the upcoming slides, which basically has a Campo column and a new MPO column. And the Campo column is if the area stays within Campo, here's what the allocation or maybe a pro or a con could be. And the next slide, the next column would be a new metropolitan planning organization. If Clayton and the Archer Lodge and the county decide to go in that direction, here's some options that they could have. So those major funding streams are basically the same, with the exception of that second row there, the STBGDA, which is the Surface Transportation Block Grant Direct Attributable. I know it's a big term, but since a new MPO would not have a population of over 200,000, they would not be eligible for that kind of funding. So that's a big difference there.
Quick question for you. What if the entire county was folded into that with our population, what, 240?
It still would be based on that urban area population, okay. So it would be the 50,000.
Okay.
So that's the big takeaway from these next two slides. Now I'm going to have a slide right here. If the area decided to become an MPO, what are some possible funding streams that you can have? And here's some possible monies that the area would get if they become an MPO. And and these are based on like Newbern numbers. So it's going to change a little bit, but these are estimates. So you basically your PO, your planning funds, you get about 200,000, and roughly from FTA you could get about $1 million, and then maybe the carbon reduction about 115,000. So that's, to me, this is an important slide too, so. So going to the next one. Now, one of the big things that Campo does very successfully, they have a locally administered projects program, and I'm sure Chris can talk a lot more about that. This is how Campo designates some of their funding. They use the STPDA, or the block grant funding that I mentioned earlier, and they also use some CMAQ, which is congestion mitigation for air quality. So both of those funding streams go into the LAP program. So I've got a lot of information there, but some big takeaways is on this is I talked about the STBGDA funds. The area, if new MPO forms, you would not be eligible for that, but you could get some CMAQ funds there. So, now, some other, going through some other considerations in forming a new MPO, Campo has a very experienced staff. They do a great job of optimizing federal and state law. So if a new MPO formed, you got to get some folks trained. They've got to know how to handle MPO duties. So there's that learning curve there that they would need to have. So next slide. Voting on control. You know, if you remain a member of Campo, you've got to have all your decisions go through the Campo Executive Board. And then there's also some weighted voting, which, to be fair, something Campo does not do a whole lot of. But if there is some weighted voting, Clayton, Archer Lodge, and Johnston County have only a small percentage of the total votes. And if you form a new MPO, you kind of have you can make your own decisions, and you would have far fewer members of the Campo's board. Now, I've got incredible dry mouth right now, so I apologize for that. So the expansion to some things that also, which are Campo or a new MPO could do, you could invite other areas into, I take a lot of decongestants this time of year, and it caught me here. You're a lifesaver, Mr. Braswell. So anyway, the Campo could also invite new municipalities like Smithfield, Selma, and others to join the Campo. And also, if a new MPO forms, you could also invite some of the non-Campo portions of Johnston County. So remember in that earlier slide, we had some areas in Campo that are in Johnston County right now. So that part of their urban area does go into Johnston County. A big important thing that, unless you're in that urban area, you do not have to be a member of the MPO. So if you invite an area, say a Smithfield or Selma, they do not have to join the MPO. They can accept or decline the membership. And there's one other thing about the Triangle Regional Model. If that's the travel demand forecasting tool that we have throughout this area. There's a bunch of counties that are included in that. If the Triangle Regional Model, that we'd have to relook at that funding agreement for the Triangle Regional Model if a new MPO is formed. Some thoughts about this is that if you remain with Campo, Johnston County would be part of two organizations, Campo and the Upper Coastal Plain RPO. If a new MPO forms, there's possibly 3 organizations that there would be a part of: Campo, that new MPO, and the Upper Coastal Plain RPO as a max. So, and this is a high-level decision tree. I'm going through really fast right here some of the decisions, but we have a targeted date of June 30th. Again, that's a target date, and what we're asking is that some sort of decision that's made. It can go beyond that, of course, that target date, but what we're trying to do is, if you want to stay a member of Campo, that's great. Just let us know. If you want to form a new MPO, that's also fine too. We will be glad to work with you in that respect. But also, if a new MPO forms, there's some things that Chris and Campo would need to do when it comes to redoing their bylaws and some other things there to take out that portion of that new MPO. So there's a lot of dominoes that fall depending on whatever decisions you all make here. next one. Whoops, too fast. Well, anyway, the next slide is those next steps. I've kind of I talked about that initial decision, and really the drop dead date for everything is December 29th. If there's a new MPO that's going to form, that's the date. We've got to have it in. That is the drop dead date. That other date of June 30th, remember, that's just the target date. So I thank y'all for carefully considering this situation, this information, and if I can be of any question, if we can be any further help, please let us know. And I'm going to turn it over to Chris. I'm sure he's got quite a few things to say about Campo, and we'll hang loose. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
All right. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. You guys have a lot of slides in front of you, so I'm not going to give you any more slides. Just a few moments to talk to you about a couple of things. Johnston County has been a member of Campo for about 15 years now, 16 years. We've had a very successful partnership. We feel like Commissioner Lauder is our current vice chair, and if our board continues with its sort of tradition, he'll be the future chair if you all decide to stay in Campo. As Scott had mentioned, Campo has a lot of, I think, strong technical and planning skills and experience that we bring to this partnership. We have done a number of planning studies in the county. If some of you may have been involved with the county commission back in 2005, 2007 when Johnston County joined Campo after the 2000 census. We also had a small expansion because the town of Clayton had grown outside of our boundary after the 2010 census. And at that time, we had talked about whether the county was interested in further expanding into Campo. And you all did not want to do that. And so we continue to work with you all, both inside and outside of our boundary, and we'll continue to do that as well on everything from the current Southeast Area Study, which is a large multimodal transportation and land use planning study that's going on. It's actually an update of an earlier Southeast Area Study we did several years ago, and a variety of other studies, whether it's a regional freight study, ITS studies, looking at optimizing signal systems, doing our regional transportation plan that we do once every 4 years. All of those things are things that we've worked very successfully together on, and they result in more than just plans that go and sit on a shelf, right? So Johnston County and Clayton, both separately, together, and with a partnership with Division 4 of NCDOT, have been very successful in our LAP program. So taking some of those direct federal funds that we get and putting those into projects on the ground. So since 2005, the portion of Johnston County inside Campo has received about $18 million that went directly to building things that are out there on the ground today. Maybe one of the biggest examples of that would be the Front Street extension in Clayton. That was a pretty large one that happened not too long ago. In addition to that, there's just a whole host of major projects funded by NCDOT that we've been able to work together on to get programmed into the state TIP and then actually moving forward into design and or construction. And we would love to continue to be your MPO and serve you in that way. At Campo, and Commissioner Lauder can probably attest to this, it's everyone has a seat at the table, right? And the way that we vote, while we do have a weighted voting option, it has never been invoked. It has not been used one time. So it's on paper, but it has never been used. And so that means every vote at Campo is one person for each member, and one person gets a vote. And that's how that has worked. And we take it as a source of pride that everyone works pretty well together, and that results in most votes being unanimous. Not every vote, but most votes, because we try to make sure that every member is heard and that every member's needs are being met to the extent they can be met. I think we'd all love to have all the money we can have to build all the projects we want to build, but that's just not reality. But short of that, we have seen that our MPO, with as large as it is, you get support from all those other local jurisdictions, whether it's the town of Bunn or the city of Raleigh. When you need help with something, you can look to their staff, you can look to their elected officials, and they work together to help each other. And that's really what we hope to continue to do with you all moving forward. That's all I have for you today.
Thank you. Any questions?
I do. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And this might be like asking a Ford salesman, why should I buy a Chevrolet? But I'm a representative on the Upper Coastal Plain RPO. But I've had a lot of connected transportation people say this is a great opportunity for Johnston County to be its own MPO. But from what I hear here, that doesn't necessarily, why would that be? Why would it be good for us to have our own MPO if we all came together under Clayton and Archer's Lodge?
Yeah, great. I think it's a great question, and rightfully you should ask yourselves that. And I will preface that by saying I actually worked for the Upper Coastal Plain RPO many, many years ago. Moved from there to the Jacksonville MPO. Also helped run the Peanut Belt RPO. So, and our two deputy directors also came from that RPO world to the MPO world. So we've got a lot of experience working in those areas. And, you know, what I can tell you is that it will be a lot of work to stand up a new MPO. And with the budget that you can get with those federal funds, you can get the job done and meet the requirements. But you will still be putting in your own money, and what you will find over time is that you will end up putting in more and more local funds with not much more federal funding coming in. You will have your own decision points that would just be the members of that MPO.
Right.
But those would also be your partners, just the members of that MPO, right? And while we work with our fellow RPOs and MPOs that border us,
sure.
In some ways, yeah, we would also be competitors, right, in the statewide prioritization process. We'd be going after the same money. The situation that Johnston County and Clayton are in right now is that you're a member of Campo, but because of the way the funding works in the state funding decision tree for the construction projects, you're sort of like our only customer, right? And so there are many times when Campo is able to submit and support projects in Johnston County that if they were across the line in Wake County, they would just not score well enough to be able to show up for that fund.
Right.
So, you know, you would have to have a period of time of capacity building, right? And those federal requirements are real, right? There's real consequences. When I moved down to the Jacksonville MPO, one of the reasons why they brought us in to work there was because they were deficient at that point in time in meeting their requirements. When you use those federal funds, you can only use those for the MPO planning, right? So what a lot of small MPOs used to do, and innocently, I think, was they'd say, oh, anything transportation you can use those funds on. So if a site plan review came in, they'd use it for that, right? And sort of the easy way to think about that is you're not using these MPO dollars to tell a new development where to put their trash dumpster or what their parking lot should look like, right? These are for those long-range transportation planning things. And the result of that is if you exceed those minimum requirements, you will see that pay off, right? And I think that the results of the last 15 years in getting projects put in on the ground with that partnership with Campo and NCDOT is testament to that.
Right. Thank you, Chris.
All right, any other questions? Thank you. Yeah, I did have a couple of thoughts. One is I'll say if it had not been for, and you can correct me, where's Scott back in the corner over there, both you correct me, but had it not been for the redefining of urban area, this would probably be still contiguous to Raleigh, and there would not be an option, but they basically redefined it. And in 10 years from now, when the next census is in, you know, people will be sitting in here, probably be reconnected to Raleigh. And so we're, you know, we do have an opportunity right now to, as we've heard from those who've been to a couple of sessions, you know, to basically decide if we want to take it on our own. And I'll say for a couple of reasons that it concerns me. One is the $230,000 we would get, if we're lucky, that would be 2 people. And I dare to say that we're not going to find 2 people that are going to be the equivalent of what the staff at Campo is from as far as technical expertise and the breadth of the folks and the number of folks they have on their bench to provide that service to at least Archer Lodge, Clayton, and parts of Johnston County, which I didn't realize it was so close to Benson. When I looked at that map, I mean, it almost is in Benson now. It definitely goes to McGee's Crossroads area. The other thing is we talked about, and I know we've talked about it here, is I know that there are other towns who want to be a part of this organization. And the best and the information I'm getting from both the DOT and from Campo is that's probably going to be a phased-in process. If we stick with Campo, they're not going to bring them all in. They need to look at 20-year projections and then see, how we can manage to grow and expand into Johnston County and do it in a smart way. And likewise, if we were to form our own MPO, it would probably be wise for us to do the same thing. Instead of bringing everybody in at one time, we're going to get the 3 parties that would to consist of the new MPO, the Clayton area MPO, and then we would bring in the other towns in some sort of systematic matter. So none of that's going to be an overnight solution. Let's see, the other thing that I'll mention, and Commissioner Godwin, you touched on it, is the 200,000, to get 200,000 in population to get that next pool of money, and that's the let me look, I wrote it down here, STBGDA funds. So even if the county grows, that urban area will have to grow to get to that. So it's going to be a while before we get eligible for those funds. And again, the last thing is, we're the only game in Campo in Division 4, which is a nice thing that we're able to do that. So I would say, from my perspective, having been involved in Campo through the town of Clayton and in Johnston County, that I would prefer to stay with Campo, and then let's look at systematically moving and involving other towns in the county. But that's a bigger Campo board decision. But I don't think we need to make a decision today, because we typically don't hear information and vote on it. So I'd say we have time for additional questions to send to the DOT or to Campo to make sure we have all our questions answered, and then look at the meeting on the 19th for taking a vote on that, so we can meet the June 30th date for that. And again, the way the numbers look at it, if Clayton says no, or we say no, it's done, then we're not going to reach the 70. We would both have to agree on whatever decision is. So Clayton has part of that as well. So.
And I would just add the deadlines that you heard earlier. If you all decide to stay with Campo, those deadlines sort of go away at that point, right? And as an MPO, just in general, we can expand, or we can change our boundaries within that 20-year planning area, really at any time the board and the locals decide to want to do that. So I think that the critical path decision for you all is, do you want to stay in Campo or not? And if you do, then we can have conversations about if you want to stay and you want other parts or other municipalities to join Campo, we can start having those conversations and figuring out what's the best systematic approach to doing that.
Any other questions, comments?
I do, Chris. Would that expansion have to be contiguous areas?
Probably, yeah. We don't really do, right. But if you look at our boundary now, you can kind of see, from the north to the south, it does kind of bow to the west just a little bit.
Right.
In the middle.
Staff, could you roll back to that? I think that was almost the second slide. I think that Mr. Walston had up there, the map.
Yeah, the one with the green.
The one before.
Yeah, the one before it. Yeah, I think that's, yeah.
So yeah, on that one you can see it's close into Clayton, and it doesn't touch Wilson's Mills or anybody else. So, if it was, and I think from where the now Clayton Archaeological urbanized area is, you would see that we would, if you all decide to stay, we'll have to modify our boundary to at least get the rest of that blue area incorporated. Right. But at that point, if we want to talk about Wilson's Mills or anything as a first step, we could do that.
Right.
And you can kind of see on the north and south, or the upper right and lower left. If it was a situation where, I don't know, everyone but Selma or Smithfield wanted to join, we could have those conversations and try to figure that out. But honestly, the way to look at this is, what are the travel sheds
and what makes sense
today and in the future?
Right.
And I find it hard to believe there's any 20-year projection that wouldn't push that to 95.
I agree.
All right, any other questions?
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Boston, thank you. Chris, thank you. Ma, Lane. All right, I don't think, it doesn't seem to end here. Let's go. Let's go on to the next item, which is a financial presentation. Kyle, and I always mess your last name up, but is that Lux?
Low.
Low? Yeah, that's okay. There we go. From Davenport.
You
So.
got it.
You talk about Long, how about him? He's been sitting here through all of this.
Yes, yes.
Got a presentation, I think we got enough of that.
I'm sorry, I didn't say this was related to our public utilities, so let me clarify that. Yeah, yeah.
So, Mr. Chair and members of the board, it's nice to see you all as always.
See you as well.
And to the chair's introduction, we do indeed have a presentation on utilities that sort of dovetails with what you heard earlier in terms of Chandra talking about the long-term capital planning and some of the fee setting, things of that variety. What we have today is very much in partnership with Chandra and Kim and Rick and Chad and Martha in terms of multi-year financial planning for our water and sewer system. At the end of this, there is a series of utility revenue bonds that will finance a series of projects we'll talk about, and so that's kind of the end of the presentation. We always like to kind of take a step back before we go and ask you as a board to adopt those things, just give a little perspective on where we're heading in terms of the multi-year forecasting side of things. I should say on the front end, we also been working very closely with the Wildan folks, who Chandra mentioned, also kind of part of the team as we think about all this planning in terms of capital planning and financial planning. So background, again, you know who we are, but we're really here talking about water and sewer, public utilities. We're in good shape on water and sewer, but we have a lot going on. I think you know that, the public knows that. And so a lot of this study here, this presentation, is how do we make sure we're able to do all the things that you need to do to continue to invest both in new capacity, rehabbing existing facilities, and make sure you're in just as good a shape financially today, and make sure we're that way into the future as well. So on page 2, I think, Mr. Chair, you all know this. I'll go pretty quickly here. You have your 3 various funds internally. We're really looking at the aggregate of these. So all of the water, the sewer, the bulk customers, everything is tracked independently. All that detail is kind of buried in here. But the discussion today is really how is our overall water and sewer utility being run, being managed, and how do we plan for that as a whole into the future. Importantly, you have a very good track record of those funds being what we call self-liquidating, self-supporting, in that they are not reliant in any way on support from the general fund. That insulates the general fund, knowing it has a variety of its needs. It is a best practice to make sure that the water and sewer funds are indeed self-supporting and paying for themselves. And so that is all part and parcel of the planning that is done within here. So page 3, in terms of background, another important sort of advantage, if you will, to having a self-supporting utility fund is that the debt associated with that utility fund does not count against our general fund or tax-supported debt capacity. So in the other conversations that you're having and thinking with all of the various projects that are on your horizon on the general fund side, making sure that we have a fully self-supporting, financially self-sufficient utility system insulates the general fund for all those other important general fund and school-related projects. The bottom of the page here, very similar to our general obligation sort of borrowing programs. If you recall, a couple of years ago, the county got its inaugural first-ever credit ratings just on the water and sewer system. So our water and sewer utility enterprise fund, that separate business, if you will, has its own credit ratings, totally separate and aside from the county's general fund. Those are AA2 and AA+. Those are very, very good credit ratings, especially right out of the gate just a couple of years ago, and just focused specifically on the water and sewer side. We're very much in the thick of planning for your second utility revenue bond issuance, and so all of that is incorporated in here. So as we go to page 4, our goals and objectives, we'll try and go through these relatively quickly, but we want to give you a little bit of an overview of utilities in terms of the credit rating perspective. What are the rating agencies looking at What do they care about when they're assigning those credit ratings? And we'll give a little bit of a history that's a useful precursor maybe to where we're going. We'll talk about the existing debt profile. And really, as you get into numbers 4, 5, 6, and 7, it's that multi-year planning. Same as you've been doing on the general fund side, same as you've been doing on the utility side for a number of years, making sure we're watching that, making sure we're updating it. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of big projects, and so we want to be on top of that, which you have been into the future. As we get to page number 5, so our existing utility credit ratings, just want to give you a little sense of where yours are relative to the overall credit rating scale. And again, utility credit ratings here in kind of that light blue boxes were AA2 and AA+. And so those are very, very strong credit ratings. Not necessarily our terms, those are rating terms. I might have thrown an additional very in there, but they're very strong if you look at that commentary. And interestingly, from S&P, the utility system actually has the same rating as the general fund. So it just tells you how strong you've been historically on the water and sewer side. That's obviously important as we think about borrowing for new water and sewer projects. The higher that credit rating, the lower our interest rate or our cost of funds when we do that borrowing. So it is a direct cost saver to the users of the system, to the ratepayers, to have as high of a credit rating as possible. So that gets us into page 6. And on page 6, looking at, again, what is it that specifically the rating agencies are looking for in the water and sewer system when they're assigning that credit rating? It's a little bit different than what we may look at on the general fund side of things, but they still kind of break it out into categories here, which is useful for us. There's some similar concepts here, but technically the way they go rate a utility system is different than the way they rate a general fund borrowing. So the table there, we tried to kind of lay this out and highlight a couple things. Top of the page here, they say system characteristics that accounts for about 30% of the rating. Those are things that to a large extent are outside of your day-to-day control. So if you recall on the general fund side, and we talk in March, we've got the economy, income levels that we talk about. We can impact through economic development and other things, but they're not within our day-to-day control. That's kind of in line with that top category there of system characteristics. That's about 30% of the rating. As you then move down and you go look at financial strength and management, that's where we get to things that are very much within our collective, meaning the commissioners working closely with staff, with ourselves. We can control these things to a great extent. And so we spent a bunch of time in the financial projections looking at those. I'll highlight a couple things under financial strength. It's 40% of the rating here. Again, this is looking at just Moody's for the moment. But they're looking at annual debt service coverage. That's basically what's our annual cash flow relative to our debt service. We're going to talk about that and what that looks like at the end of the booklet here. They're looking at our days cash on hand. So that's basically our reserves. We think about on the general fund side, we have our unassigned fund balance policy. We talk a lot about that. Same concept on utilities. They just call it something different. They call it days cash on hand. Then they look at debt to operating revenues, just another way to kind of measure how leveraged the system. So all of those things equate to about 40% of the credit rating.
Can I ask you a question, Kyle?
You may.
On our general fund, the thing that keeps us from being, say, AAA across the board is probably things beyond our control, like average income per capita. What about this? Is there anything here that we need to change to get it one more step higher? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think as we look here in the presentation, you're on sort of the front end of a very major capital program.
Right.
And so I think what'll be interesting is how these discussions go. We think they'll go well with the rating agencies. It'll be the second time they've looked in detail at the utility system by itself. I think that they will look at the amount of capital that we need to do and want to understand how it is we're sort of managing that. We'll talk about how we've done that in the projections. So in the short run, is there anything else you can be doing? The short answer is no. You're doing what you can do. There's a slide in here that'll get directly to user rates. And so maybe if I add a little bit more specificity to it, incrementally adjusting user rates on an annual basis and looking hard at those, that's probably the thing most directly within your collective control. Similar to tax rate on the general fund side, making sure that we're keeping pace with inflation, the cost of living, the need to invest in capital. We'll talk about that in a couple slides. That's probably the thing that's most directly within your control that, that we know we've been looking at. And Mr. Godwin, to your point, if you look at that management section in there, that little section in there, rate management, that's one of the things they look at. So they're going to want to see and understand, okay, how closely are we watching these trends? Are we as a county with the commissioners willing and able to make adjustments to the revenues and the rates when we need to based upon a plan?
Right.
So page 7 gives just a little bit of history in terms of the financials. We've been growing as a county, and you know this. You've heard a number of different presentations, but you've been growing. Utility systems are growing. You know all that. Net revenues over the last 5 years, this is looking 2018 to 2022, have grown from about 25 million to about 38 million. You take your eye to the far right-hand side of the page there, both revenues and expenditures have been growing at 10 to 11% average per year. That's a very healthy clip. And so that's part of that story, similar to the general fund, whereby how do we make sure we can manage the system financially, make sure we're self-sufficient, and plan ahead, given that pace of growth. Your debt service has been growing. We know we've got a lot of capital to do for the next couple of years. So that's a big piece of what we're looking at. Debt service coverage ratio, that very bottom bar there, kind of highlighted in green. It's been hovering in and around, call it 2.5 times. It's kind of the terminology we use there. Anytime you see that 2.0, we'll talk about 2.0x. What that really means is we have free cash flow about double, meaning 2 times the annual debt service payments. That's going to be a measurement that we're going to watch really, really closely. It's going to get lower. We know that's not a surprise. We had a lot of capital to do, and so we're balancing some of that given the needs that you have. On page number 8, like we like to do, just give you a little bit of sense of perspective. This is a comparative in terms of that debt service coverage ratio. Again, this is analogous to when we look on the general fund side, our debt service to expenditures. Same kind of general concept here for utilities, debt service coverage ratio. What is our annual cash flow? We've been historically at about 2.5 times. That's that dark green bar there, kind of the middle section. We've compared you here to other AA2, which is the same credit rating we are from Moody's. Across North Carolina, you've got good company there. There's a variety of them. You can see folks anywhere from High Point in around 1.6 to Harnett upwards of 5 times. So each utility is unique. It's not to say we need to be exactly like anybody else, but it gives a perspective of kind of where we are relative to others. The other sort of section I'll point out on this page, the national medians at the top of the page, you can see those in around 2.5 times plus or minus. So that's one of those 2 important financial ratios that we're watching. The other is our days cash on hand. Again, analogous to our unassigned fund balance on the general fund side. The way they talk about that in utility context is days cash on hand. It's certainly been growing. We would expect that. You've been bringing on SDF fees. You've been bringing on nice surpluses each year. It's been well run financially, so this is a very strong ratio for you. That days cash on hand, you can see at the bottom, goes from about 658 to about 817. What that means is that we've got a nice, healthy set of reserves. So when we start doing the planning going forward, we're going to use some of those. So the ratepayers are not going to be sitting there going, hey, why are we sitting on so many reserves? we're doing a lot of is balancing how much do we borrow relative to how many of those dollars do we use in reserve, and making sure that we've got flexibility to make some course corrections if we get surprises. So page 10, again, comparative. Where do you in Johnston County kind of stack up relative to other AA2s and some of those national medians? For the moment, you're right in the middle of the pack. 800 days cash on hand kind of puts you right at or about the median for other North Carolina AA2s. If you look at that national median, I think that's the other important sort of portion of that graph. When we talk to the rating agencies, they'll be looking not just at North Carolina, but how do we compare nationally. That's in and around, 500-600 days cash on hand. So before we start, sort of layering on new projects, new debt, between balancing that with using some existing cash, what do we have in terms of our existing debt profile? You can see that laid out here on page 11. It's about $314 million over the course of roughly the next 30 years. The county has benefited and done a great job historically of capturing as low an interest rate of financing as available to you. So over the years, it's been USDA at various points. It's been revolving fund loans at various points. We've been able to refinance those in the 2015, 2016 time period and kind of consolidate things, bring the rates lower. With the prior revenue bond issuance in 2021, that really funded just a piece of what you were doing. The other piece came from a very large revolving fund loan at a 1.1% interest rate. So from an interest cost perspective, the county's done a great job of managing and making as low as possible the interest component of that debt profile. That being said, it still is a loan that we need to pay back over time. And the reason that we do that is we want to spread the cost of those improvements over the customers that will benefit from them for generations here, maybe for decades. And so that's basically where we start in terms of the existing debt profile. Then on page number 12, we start looking forward here. So here's our CIP, our capital improvement program. A little bit different than what Chandra showed, only that we're looking at the next 5 years. So as you kind of look at those two sets of numbers, this is purposely just looking at a 5-year window. That tends to be what we look at from a called financial and capital planning perspective, as we're looking at the cash flows and the rate setting, et cetera. It's about $400 million plus or minus. It is funded with a variety of different funding sources. The biggest slice of the pie there, Mr. Chairman, I heard you mention that earlier, kind of the different puzzle pieces, whether it's a puzzle, it's a pie, whatever it is. This is one of those mixtures in terms of how this all fits together that we're watching very closely. So of that $400 million, about 68% plus or minus looks like it's going to be bond funded over the next 5 years. The other portion of that, so roughly 30%, is coming from grants, it's coming from other outside sources, it's coming from using some of our existing cash. And so what we're trying to do there is find a good balance, an appropriate balance of these different funding sources, and obviously take advantage of either grants, which Chandra and Kim have done a great job of doing, and or low interest loans where they are available. So on page 13, the most immediate portion of the CIP that we're really talking about for the moment is the portion that will be funded with this upcoming revenue bond issuance. Total projects to be funded, about $83.5 million. The biggest component of that is on the water treatment plant expansion, expanding that capacity, obviously to be able to have the water capacity for the growth and the existing customers that are currently residents and obviously paying customers of the system. We've worked very closely, credit to Chandra and Kim and Chad and Martha for kind of bringing all this together. There's a lot of moving pieces here. But what you will have after this presentation is an authorization to continue moving forward with a revenue bond issue in the maximum amount of about $85 million, or exactly $85 million. And so that'll fund $83.5 million of projects as it's laid out right here. As we think about that bond funding, there was a kind of a little slide in here in terms of where we are with interest rates. They've been in the news and the headlines, et cetera, a lot, especially the last year and a half or thereabouts. I think we talked about this in March, but rates for a long-term borrower with very strong credit ratings like you have are still historically very favorable. They're higher than they were in 2020 and 2021. Certainly, those were all-time historical lows, and you can see that on the graph there. Kind of tried to circle that on the left-hand side. You go back over the last 40 years, you saw that flip down, certainly abnormal. We're seeing kind of the corollary to that nowadays. But as we think about this financing of about $85 million, we've planned with an interest rate of 5.5%. The current market rate is probably in the low 4s right now. So we've purposely planned on the more conservative side. We always like to do that because a lot of things we don't control. And as we look at these projections, that'll be in the next couple of pages, to the extent the interest rates, when we go sell these bonds and lock in the rates, are closer to the current market than we've planned, everything will look just incrementally a little bit better than what we're showing in the next couple of pages. So we then go to page 15, and again, this is a summary of a lot of work that's gone into a bunch of iterations of planning, which I know you, Mr. Chair, and other members of the board appreciate in terms of the number of moving pieces here. But we wanted to give you a sense of what the proposed rate increases are over the next 5 years. So you obviously be adopting the upcoming budget here, FY 2024. That's the process you're in right now. But we'd like to, rating agencies like to see what's the plan over at least a 5-year time period. I think our recommendation, which is easy for us to say as outsiders, is to be in the mindset of incrementally annually adjusting user rates, especially given the environment we're in. So inflation, which we talk a lot about, is impacting operational costs, it's impacting capital costs, and so sort of being within that discipline, getting back to the rate management section in the methodology of annually looking at what needs to be done in terms of user rate increases to keep pace with inflation, capital costs, et cetera, is just a good practice to be in. You can see there what's projected for the moment, in and around 6%. I think that seems to us, at least, again, that's tough decisions you need to make, but seems to us to be a reasonable place to be in. When you think about inflation, where it's been, the challenge I think we face right now is that the amount of capital, I mean, just call it infrastructure, that's being done regionally, nationally, et cetera. There's a lot of things getting done. That'll pay off in terms of benefits over the long run. But there will continue to be surprises in terms of project costs, et cetera. And so thinking about just annually looking at this is really would be our recommendation in terms of how you think and plan in terms of rate increases. So that then gets to page 16 and trying to sum up a lot of things into a single page. But we talked about two of those arguably most important financial ratios, debt service coverage on the left-hand side, days cash on hand or our reserves on the right-hand side. And this is the latest projections from Wildan, working with utility department, with Chad, Martha, and everybody in terms of what this looks like over the next 5 years. So this incorporates the entire CIP. It incorporates the projected growth right now. It incorporates those roughly 6% annual rate increases over the next couple of years. And what you see, you look to the left-hand side, that coverage ratio, by virtue of kind of working our way through the last series of financings, and especially that large $91 million low-interest loan, and then kind of working our way into this very major set of capital in terms of the water treatment plant expansion and that capacity expansion. We've got a time period whereby we're expecting, no surprise, that coverage ratio to dip for a little bit. And then as you look in the out years, it starts to increase again as we get into 27 and 28. The corollary to that is on the right-hand side, we have purposely made sure we've got good cash reserves as a buffer against some of these potential, dare say, likely surprises and capital costs over the next couple years. What I would say from a maybe expectation setting standpoint is that if things trend exactly as they're in this book right now, it's reasonable to think we'd probably be using a little more cash and a little less debt over the next couple of years. We'd probably work that ratio a little bit depending upon what things look like over the next couple of years. But for the moment, we're so early in this cycle that what we wanted to recommend to you and build in this planning is to hold some of that cash back on purpose, knowing that we've got a series of very large capital projects. We're seeing overruns, meaning capital costs are going up, not just for you, for everybody. And so keep some of that flexibility for your sake over the next couple of years. So that's kind of the thought process and the mindset. I think that is demonstrated also as you look at page 17. We want to put this little longer time period in here. So this is really pulling out of the CIP the timing of actually making these capital investments over the next, at this point, 20 years in terms of this graph. And so what's important is not just the gross dollars that we plan to invest in the water and sewer infrastructure, but when do we think we need those dollars? And so as you look at this graph here, we're clearly sort of in a cycle right now where between 23, 24, starts to tail off in 25, making some very large investments. A lot of that's on the water capacity side. Then you'll notice that in FY 25, 26, 27, there's still investments to be made, but it's a much less sort of order of magnitude over those years. Then you start to gear up for sort of the next round, the next cycle that gets into 27, really into 28 and 29. And so it's these out-year projections that we're watching closely, studying. They're built into all the models. And one of the reasons that we like to think about having a stronger cash position right now, if we get into FY 25 and 26 and everything's running exactly in the model right now, we'll probably use a little more cash, probably borrow a little bit less. But we want to give ourselves that ability, that flexibility now, just in case, again, we get surprises. There's a lot of variables in this, and so that's the mindset. Page 18 then, just a series of next steps, and happy to answer any questions that you have. Obviously here this morning, present some of these things, and really the request and the action of the commissioners is to think about and approve the various documents we need in order to move forward with the financing. Our immediate next step, we'll get an application in to the LGC basically tomorrow. We're planning to meet with and talk to the rating agencies the end of the month. I think that's scheduled for the 29th. Local Government Commission in their July meeting would approve the financing itself, and we'd plan to be in the marketplace on Thursday, July 20th, selling the bonds, locking in the interest rate, et cetera. So we're about, 45 days or thereabouts from actually being in the market and locking in the interest rates on this financing. And so with that, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I would be happy to take any questions that you have, and I think Martha, maybe others, will have a presentation after me.
Any questions?
I've got a comment. With all of Kyle's presentations to us, I get the mental image that when you go home at night, your wife says, "How's Johnston County doing today?" Good job.
All right. No other questions? Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the next item on the agenda is a resolution approving execution and delivery of up to $85 million water and sewer revenue bonds.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to listen to the presentation if you want to, but I'd like to cut on through it and make a motion that we approve it.
Second.
That sounds good to me. I have a motion. Not opposed to that.
Good job, Martha.
Yeah. Keep that. You should have came up earlier. Any other discussion? No. All right. All in favor of adopting the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Good job, Fred.
Resolution is adopted. If you're on a roll, Fred, you can
Just
just
roll
keep
on
right on
through.
rolling
Yeah,
there.
let's move on with 12. Don't we have to do that?
Yep.
Item 12.
Looks like 12, 13, and 14.
All right, I'll make
I
a
think you
motion.
can handle
I'll
all
make a
those.
motion, we approve all those.
I second the motion to approve all of those.
All right. I have a motion to second.
With the understanding to the public that we've all had a chance to digest these things
Yeah.
fully.
That is a good point out that we've had in the agenda review. We've already been updated on all these.
Yes,
so.
we have.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve items 12, 13, and 14, all related to public utilities. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All the items are approved.
Got that done
I
pretty
got to
quick.
turn that all in there. Thank you, Fred.
You want anything?
All right,
else?
next up, we have appointments. We had made some in the consent agenda. We do have one board appointment for the Airport Authority that has one position open with 2 applicants. You have that form at your seats. So if you would fill that out and turn it in, and we will announce the appointment at the beginning of our 6 o'clock meeting. So then we have delinquent tax collection report. We have the information. Do we need any explanation on that?
I think it's self-explanatory.
I was thinking it was too, after we get those 3 motions out of the way.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, we will move on then to manager reports and comments. Yeah, just come on over here, yeah.
No report this morning, but tonight I would like to kind of update you and follow up on a few things like Shannon talked about with the public utility CIP modeling and some of the modeling we're doing with general fund, if that's okay with the board.
It's fine.
General.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right. Board comments, reports. I'm going to save mine to tonight.
I've got one.
All right.
I just want to mention that a couple of weeks ago, we had a visitor here from Tom Beckton, the president of the Federal Reserve Bank in Richmond, came to Johnston County with some of his staff and did a complete tour. We met some business leaders in Clayton. We met with UNC Health Johnston leaders in Clayton Hospital. Went out to the Carnegie family farm between Princeton and Brogdon, and ended up at the Ava Gardner Museum here with some local leaders, and then a reception at the airport, and it was well received. I think Mr. Beckton came here not to bring us a lot of information, but he came to field questions and find out what's happening in Johnston County, and it was a very good day. I spent all day with him. Chris laid it out and did an excellent job, but I thought all of the people representing the county did an excellent job. We had one of the building inspector, Russell Reeves, is that right? He fielded some questions, and I was just proud of everybody. It was a good day.
Any other board comments? I think, do we have a plaque? I know somebody brought a plaque, so I feel like we ought to allow for some presentation on that, so.
Sorry, y'all moved very fast in the last 3 or 4 minutes. Anyway, I've been monitoring today, but anyway, I will skip over the whole monthly collection report, but one thing I did want to bring before y'all today is, if you'll know, and I know y'all are tired of being in here, but to me, this is important. And it's kind of important for this county too, and I think when you think about the time of year it is, and so many things that y'all are doing that are budget related, and there's a team behind all of this that makes the budget process a little easier for this county because of the collection rate. And at our last conference in the last few days or last few weeks, one of our own got basically recognized as the collection employee of the year for 2023 for the state of North Carolina.
Wow.
Long overdue, but I am tickled to death to say that it was Kathy Fudge, who is our collections manager, and she is well deserving of this. There were a lot of really, really nice comments from other counties because, as y'all well know, Johnston County generally, historically, has had one of the higher collection rates in the state. And so Kathy has been the face behind this, and even though she does, I kind of had to drag her here today. She didn't want any part of this. She just soon kind of worked behind the scenes. She and her team do an excellent job. So I just wanted to take this opportunity today and have her recognized. She did get presented, like I said, at the state convention with the award. So again, a state recognition for one of our own, and I wanted locally for y'all to be aware of it. So.
Absolutely.
And I know it's late, but can I get a picture?
Sure.
Of her
Absolutely.
with y'all?
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you for all your work. Wonderful.
Thank y'all for the great job y'all do.
Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
It's getting light over here.
Yeah, that's right.
I'd just say not.
There's room over here, Ted, if you want to walk around.
That's
I'm
perfect.
okay.
All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate you.
Are you related to Chris by chance?
Chris is my husband's first cousin.
Okay.
All right, well, good. All right, I think we do have a need for a closed session, and I don't anticipate there'll be any action taken when we come out of that, so.
All right, I move the board go into closed session for the following purposes: to discuss matters related to the location or expansion of industry or other business in the area pursuant to NCGS 143-318-11A4, to establish or instruct staff concerning the negotiations of the price and terms of a contract concerning the acquisition of real property pursuant to NCGS 143-318-11A5, and for the purpose of personal pursuit of the NCGS 143-318-11-6.
Second.
There we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion to go into closed session, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We will go into closed session after a few minutes break. Thank you.